Greetings all. My name is Nadjar-u and welcome to another Wu-Sabat Outformation class. Thank you, Hara M. Habab Jadefre Hatap, for holding the fort for the introduction. There's a few technical issues this morning that we've overcome, so appreciate your patience. We'll get cracking on for today's session. So we were looking at finishing off, as say, the message of Yaanuwn or Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, and then a brief introduction, I suppose, into Ba'h which is the 9. And so we'll sort of finish off where we were last class. So if you've not had an opportunity to see part 1 or you weren't there for last week's session, then by all means check out part 1 on YouTube. So we'll continue with that today and then step into part 2 to conclude the 9 for this, and then when we come back on in May it'll be a different class. So I would advise that people have a pen and paper today, so there'll be some work for you all to do as part of this, just to help with your understanding of what's being conveyed in this book. So my name is Nadjar-u. I'm a student teacher of the master teacher Dr. Malachi Z or Kran, and so we've got your session here for you today. Now I'm just going to do some brief introduction stuff that we usually do. So I'm just going to check that you can hear me okay in terms of the sound by running a short poll. So just for 30 seconds or so, can you hear me clearly over the music? So the background Om chant, can you hear my voice clearly okay? So you can vote to attest to that in the affirmative or the negative. I'll give you 30 seconds to do that. Depending on what device you're on, you may need to swipe left or right in order for the poll to appear. Okay, seems most people can hear me okay. And then the second poll then is the visuals. So can you see the presentation clearly on the screen? Again, if it's not shown for you, you may need to swipe left or right in order to do that. If you're on Facebook, you won't be able to see the polls. So if you want to join us for the full interactive experience, then by all means, use the link in the description to join us directly on the Zoom platform. If you're comfortable to be on Facebook, that is equally fine. Okay, so it seems most people can see me okay, so let's press on. Right, so just going to start the class with a positive affirmation, just to help us to connect with our ancestors, and we have a positive session and class today. So I'm going to do that in our Sabaean language and then translate that into English for full and proper understanding. So it's called Partakyud, the affirmation. Abdul Kale Namazurat Wu Fakur Ame Kasam Paut Pa Paut Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Pa Paut Wu Kale Ashuk Kawun Jawef Nea Anuki Kasam Pa Paut Wu Pa Paut Kawun Kasam Nea Anuki Wahu Ame Pa Paut Wu Pa Paut Kawun Wahu Ame Naya Nakuk Kadur Najo Ame Kasam Pa Paut Wu Habub Ame Mushachas Nakuk Kadur Kawan Kale Pafef Nakuk Tayur Jawef Pa Paut Ame Wase Ame Tayarni Kawun Lakei Bakoy Jawef Pa Paut Anukia bed bin afashni pa paut kawun anuki pa paut kadur nakuk kadur pa paut amul nakuk amul. Okay, so what we said, translated into English, we started off by saying begin all prayers and thinking as a part of the all. And then we said, I am in the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as a part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I want in the all expanding, as long as my want is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is, I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. Okay, so again, just for webinar instructions and for clarity, on the left-hand side, obviously, you've got your audio settings here. So on your panel, so if you need to adjust those for any reason, feel free to do so. If you need to change device or things of that nature, then the audio settings on the left-hand side. We have the chat, raise your hand, and the question facility. So if you've got any messages that you want to convey in the chat, could be feedback, different things of that nature, but it's not a question, then by all means select panelists and all participants and then place those comments in the chat. So that's for feedback that are not questions to be answered. If you do have a question, then there's two ways which you can do that. So you either raise your hand, and if you raise your hand, basically what you can do, you can come live and ask your question to the student teacher directly. And what will happen is you'll be asked to unmute your phone. So you need to give permission to unmute your phone. If you've dialed in, then those options are basically *6 once you get the message or prompt to unmute your phone. If you need to raise your hand, then that is *9. So that will bring you in to ask that question verbally. And then you can do so. Obviously, you'll have the permission after that to unmute or the ability, I should say, to unmute yourself. So we ask that you stay muted as not to disturb the class. Questions generally are on the topic. Obviously, if it's worth it for us to shift, then we will do. But obviously, we're trying to get people to master a certain aspect of the doctrine. So therefore, obviously, we ask for questions to be on the topic. But as I say, if it's important or it's worth us going to the left, then we'll answer that. If not, we'll give you a reference that you can look at to go and pick up the answer that you're looking for, because that doctrine is very vast in terms of the things that can be covered. If you are not confident to come on verbally or don't wish to, simply your choice. No big problem there. You can ask your question verbally and in written form, and then one of the facilitators will verbally then convey that question for you to myself. Obviously, if there's some issue where it's not answered correctly or it's off, then give feedback and then they can pick that up to re-ask the question so you get the answer that you're understanding from the answer that you're looking for. Okay, we've got no poll question today in terms of recap quizzes, but you've got some work that you're going to have to do today just to aid your understanding. So I say it's advisable to have a pen and paper or pencil and paper or some kind of pad or writing device for further along in this session today. Right, okay, so very short introduction. Did a longer one, quite a long one in part 1, so I'm going to refer you to that so we can crack on with what we need to today. Always important, as I say, for welcome to those who are joining us for the first time, either on the Zoom platform or on Facebook. We are the United Sabaeans Worldwide. This class is being brought to you by a small organisation within that, all eyes in Egypt, Midlands and the North. And I'm a student teacher of the master teacher, Dr Malachi Z, York, Okran. And as I say, born Ghana, as you can see from the slides there, Takoradi, West Africa. um, excuse me, a coastal city in Ghana. And to say, he was born to Fatima Mariam, born March 10th, 1929. And as I say, unfortunately, she is, well, I'm saying unfortunately, fortunately, maybe, unfortunately for obviously missing her physical presence, but fortunately, I suppose that she is still exists and is one of our Salafu or ancestors, or Muslafu, they say in the language, or ancestors to call upon. And here you see her in her clan mother attire, or the attire of the clan mother, Mary Abba Dr.York, who is actually of Liberian origin, being born out of the Bassa tribe in Liberia. So it's always important that our lineage is respected. And you see the word lineage, you see line and age. So our story, as opposed to his story, is in our genes, very specifically through the mitochondrial DNA route, and that is through our sacred feminine or female. So obviously a lot of emphasis in this society oftentimes is placed upon women and men being equal. And as I say, we've done several classes about this in the past, but how, I suppose the expression maybe sometimes in the music industry in particular that we're seeing, and maybe that is influencing the younger generations in our society today, that equality is being expressed by some, let's say, as advancing or more promotion of their sexual power. Understood? So women can have as much partners as men and not be judged by it, etc., etc. It's not to say that if there were no consequences, then, and the rules of nature worked in that regard, then it's not a problem. But equality doesn't always mean the same. So equality, as you see from the science of the circle and the square, a square is 360 degrees, and so is a circle. So they're both equal in quantity, but they don't look the same. So the rules of nature do not work the same for all different species. You have to work within the rules. You don't have to, you understand? You can choose to work within the rules as you understand them. The rules are the rules. As best as you understand them, then that is the case. So the royal bloodline, so to speak, the royal genealogy or genetics is held by the female, not by the male, according to monotheistic religious teachings. It is held by the female according to natural rules. So too much, men are weakened by sex physically, women are weakened by sex in terms of their DNA. So too much male DNA obviously can mess up that royal genealogy. And so the society today, or the Mokasu controlling the society today, have no interest in preserving our royal genealogy. They have no interest in particularly protecting black women. They have no interest in helping black women or black males or the black race elevating today. More recently, we're seeing a lot of changes or the highlighting of the issues. However, in terms of the George Floyd situation, etc., and different races coming together to say that racism, as the cancer it is for the human race, is not acceptable behavior. We don't want to see it, etc. But there are still a number of forces which are present there, systematic, that would like to cause a race war between the races on this planet, cause division and separation. And still, even today, whilst there is an improvement in representation, what there isn't is a bringing forth of the real, our story connected to everybody's story, because our story is everybody's story insofar as we were here and around first. So those royal genes have to be respected, and as I've said previously on these classes, and certainly emphasized heavily by the master teacher, in that regard. We think we know about the art of sex, but certainly don't know about the rules of sex. So there's a reason behind maybe some of the, I'm going to use the word control, but I use that word loosely, some of the controls that were in place in various different cultures to protect how that sexual power was used. The issue, I suppose, for us as a people is that in monotheism, we ended up blindly following rules without context or commandment. And they say there's a difference between church and state. which obviously is clear, but man's law supersedes whatever their religious law is. And the reality is, it's got nothing to do with us as Nadjar-u people, and certainly those interested in the doctrine of Wu-Sabat. So Mary Abbot of York is a very important symbol for the new mindset that came in, the new, you're going to call it Za'am, or religious opinion, or new religion that came in for us, renewed religion that came in for us as a people in this day and time, symbolized by the rise back of the sacred feminine, or the female. So Wu-Sabat, as a spiritual science of the Nadjar-u, is feminine in origin, or female in origin. The feminine forces are the ones that generate the necessary solution to bring our mental state back first, so the mind has to be corrected first. Then, as I say, the physical solution then follows, or the physical unity follows once the mind has been addressed. So, Mary Abbot of York, as the mother of Dr. Malachi Z. York, certainly is a prominent part of our story, of bringing back our story in terms of the renewal of the 24,000 year cycle. So again, very quickly, if you want more on the introduction, so Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi is the father of Dr. Malachi Z. York, and again, the royal, tying into the royal family of Sudan. We touched upon this in part one, and as I say, we are going to do, I think, a more detailed class, maybe going into this book here, The Guidance, and another book called the Akasha Records, I think, to do some proper justice for the sacred masculine lineage there as well. All this really goes back to ancient Tamaray, or ancient Egypt, by way of the Dongolawi tribe, from the Mahdi himself, Mustafa Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi. Mustafa Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi was not Sudanese in origin, as I say, really from our pre-dynastic ancient Egyptian lineage. As I say, was a master spiritualist in that regard, but obviously the presentation of how he arrived in that time was the truth of that time, through the degree of al-Islam as you would have it today. But as I say, the monotheistic teachings have been infiltrated, one might say, and that's not our stuff. So we have learned about it, but now we're stepping all the way back into the past in order to understand where we were at our greatest point, and then bring that into the present, so we can take control of our future. So, Marcia, again, age 25, where he said he had his initiation, or maybe one of many, but certainly a prominent initiation. And so our ancestors, when teachers are being born into this world, so we make this point a lot, but we don't, as they dig up the bones of our ancestors through sciences like archaeology, paleontology, so on and so forth, to understand what took place in the past. We are informed about what took place in the past by way of outformation coming to us in the form of information. And the way that's done is every 24,000 years, our story in totality has to be renewed. But it doesn't mean to say that we don't have different elders or masters incarnating, as well as teachers born amongst us, to, let's say, turn the dial or the needle. So it's basically helping the connection for us to be at the right point, and us to be in sync, not only with nature, but our ancestors, obviously, who are the run or control existence as we have it or know it today. So that takes place by way of an in-housing. Now, this concept is known as an Amun Jedi. The ancient Tamarayans, or the ancient Egyptians, referred to this individual as Tahuti. So that same being who they're talking about. It's a vehicle or a vessel that allows our ancestors to speak through, or communicate through, in order to pass on information that we need in this day and time, in order to reconnect us back into natural nature and align us back with our ancestors, as we are their children of the ancient Egyptians referred to as the Nadjar-u, where they get the English word nature from, and it means obviousness. Yeah? And all of us are within existence, as we talked about in the initial part of the introduction or affirmation, which was all expanded, which say is existence. Now, it was housed by this individual, and from 1970, the opening the seventh seals, as they classify as, which was the uncovering, I suppose, of the symbolism and mysteries within the various different religious schools, and in order to assist him to produce the information necessary. Many books written, certainly within the catalogue, in the hundreds. Today, that's well over 1,000. But in that time, addressing those religious degrees, classes, week after week, answering questions and dealing with those. So the output was significant, and his pen was guided by the principal being El Khadir, or known as the Green One. Up until, as I say, it doesn't mean that other ancestors weren't involved, but the funneling of that, and if you sort of imagine it to be more like, if you think about the hourglass, is also referred to as the man of the hour symbolic of the last hour, 1970 down to 2000, that's 30 minutes, is symbolic of 30 years, and then the second half an hour from 2000 to 2030. So these are symbolic things that take place. If you imagine it like an hourglass type scenario, so basically we've got the outformation on all of our ancestors and that information that they need or think is useful to raise their children to be in sync in terms of growth, to become or to fulfill their potential, to be able to transform from the state we are now as Nagaru back into Natharu, or supreme beings, once again. And that is coming into a central point, which is this Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, who is again then spreading out that information, the second part of the hourglass, to the masses. Understood? Yeah. So we always work from the center outwards. Obviously, the sun, which is the center point of this solar system, and the actual system in itself, i.e. the planets, etc., are all part of the sun. They are still part of it. It's just that the sun has delegated or birthed an aspect of itself to have that system which enables then life to be progressed, etc., in a certain type of way. Understood? So let's never forget that obviously the solar system itself, or the composite parts within it, are part of the sun. And so the system is the sun, and the sun is the system. So in this regard, this El Khadir was that green one up until, we'd read those religious degrees up until 1996. There was the release of a book referred to as the Holy Tablets, which was the bridge between religion and reality. 19 chapters, also known as the Book of the Lamb, predicted by the Honourable Elijah Muhammad, come forward. So that book, as I say, addressed the sort of religious degrees and the truth within that sphere, set the record straight, but also prepared you to move away from those stories and prepare yourself for reality. Because, as I say, certain books, etc., have been told by the truth of the people it was written for, who wrote it. And the reality is, that doesn't mean to say that that's our culture and that's who we are, etc. So we've had to walk backwards all the way back to the beginning. Some may say there are many beginnings, but the beginning on into before even the beginning was there, to understand the origin of where we came from and what is our purpose and presence here today. So in that second half an hour, they yielded, and a new configuration was produced. So the physical being obviously is still the same, but then Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, as the Ifrit, being the 19th elder, was now taking over to take us now into our culture, preparing us from 2000 onwards, even though excerpts of our culture had been layered within what we were learning. This was now for us to fully blossom and become who we were supposed to be, as those ancient Egyptians, ancient children of the Nadjar-u, and it will be our culture now. You understand? That will be produced, given, and help us obviously to develop and complete the realignment of us, as I say, with our ancestors and with natural nature. Understood? So what you've seen progressively over the last 30 years is that introduction of our culture under what they refer to as the hereafter doctrine, actual facts, master secrets of Hadzarak, which means the way, again, tuning you writing, tailored, as I say, exactly for who we are or who we are supposed to be by natural nature's rules and by natural design. Okay, I won't go into this too much because, as I say, we kind of covered a lot of this in part one. But as I say, this is the culmination of a long line of great teachers who, when they brought, that was the truth of their day, understood. But obviously, they were laying seeds for us to get to the point where we are today, where we deal with the actual facts, getting back to who we are, and really uncover the mystery behind the Bible. Who was behind, the veil or the cloak, and the actual Wizard of Oz type story there was nothing but extraterrestrials of the Sumerian doctrine. These are the deities of the monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and their purpose here on the planet, etc., from the stories, say, which have been conveyed and the symbolism that sits behind a lot of those stories as well. Now, is there truth in there? Well, in order to kind of hook people in, you need some element of what appears to be facts, and that's been done in a way of mentioning certain places, Egypt in particular, so that's a tie-in which they seek to use to give themselves a little bit of authority. And then there's a lot of wordplay and games in the language that get played. So there is phonetical links that may trigger sort of genes within a person, because as we say, when you say the word Peter, P-T, ER, for example, one of Jesus' disciples, and then you say the word Ptah, understood, which is referred to as the opener, obviously one of our deities, understood, then Ptah, P-T-A-H, or P-T-A-H-A-H, Ptah and Peter, they sound exactly the same, and sound phonetically. One obviously is after the other, and this is where the spell comes in, the games, a tricknology as you would have it there, which then has us emotionally linked into things being called faith and belief, as you understand it to be, but and we're putting our emotional energy into it. The tie-in happens, but we're not necessarily getting out the spiritual results. Understood? So, the reality is that belief is ignorance. Faith in that regard is ignorance, and so things that we receive from above. In Ultimate Reality, Master Secrets, I think it's verse 77, it talks about inspiration and revelations are attributes of reasoning, but they must always be verified against actual facts. So just because we're receiving something through from the ethers or whatever, and interpreting in our mind, brain, etc., just because it comes into our mind, it doesn't make it factual. And so we have to use external verification and tests in our reasoning, a bit external and internal verification and tests, to make sure that what we're saying or acting upon is correct. As I say, we did not build pyramids on faith and belief. You have to know things. You understand? So inspiration is just information that's coming to you, obviously internally from outside. You understand? So it can be influenced by many different factors. Particularly, we should understand that living in this very modern world, as it was indicated in the right knowledge series, or taught to us in the right knowledge series, that the forces of decay or destruction known as 6 ether is in the atmosphere, and one of the ways its influencing factor has power is through advertising. Yeah? So even though a person might not say, I don't watch television, I don't do this or whatever, it's still in the atmosphere. Understood? You're still being influenced by it every day within certain environments. Understood? So because of the kind of frequencies that are being emitted in certainly in city environments. It's less effective in country environments, etc., where you've got less of those types of things in play. But it's the modern world that we live in today. You can about your phones and different things of that nature. Yeah, they're heavily influencing factors, understood. And today, what do you see in the kind of social media world, understood? Look up the word flu. Yeah, the flu, which is short for influenza. Understand? It means visitation from the stars. Go and look it up. What do they call people on this social media today? They call them influencers. So the power of the virus or flu that's affecting people's minds. Why? Because it has you focused on that individual and not on the real stars. You understand? The real stars, okay, you understand, like the 193 million miles away from Earth. That's where we are being influenced by that for a process called solar biology. We are being influenced by other objects, like the moon, for example, referred to as lunar biology. And at one time, we understood the science of, cosmology and astronomy, not astrology, or the influence of these bodies and their effect here on the planet Earth, and how we needed to sink in with that. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to kick on to where we are today, because we've got a lot to get through. Are there any questions?
There are no questions.
Okay. Let's try and get back to where we were. Oh. All right. Okay. Right. Let's start from here. So, just sort of finishing off some of the topics in Ba'h B'ah. We were heavily kind of speaking about the sort of 9 gates. So when a person transitions, that this sort of gateway opens between 2:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. in the morning, and that a person would seek to make that transition to the other side and must pass through these 9 gates. And obviously, we don't know what happens after death until you die, because knowing is after the event. However, our culture prepared us through symbolism, through certain teachings, to understand the correlation between, as I say, the physical as you would have it today and the spiritual, as shown, for example, through the deities Arashta or Aset or Isis, as they refer to as, and Nebab-Hatat, or Nebfis, they call her, where they're showing a picture of them with wings, shown as females, but with 2 wings. And those wings, one is pointing upward direction and one is pointing in a downward direction. They sort of are showing themselves opposite to each other. So one is pointing above and one is pointing below. One is obviously representing the realm of the living, and the one is representing the world of the underworld, so to speak, in so much people associate with death. But as we explained before, our ancestors see here as the realm of the dead, because when you're born, you are destined to die. So life or living is temporary, or the burning process of life is temporary. It will expire once that rawah or fire goes out. Understand, the soul is powered through a person's breath, as opposed to where they are, which is the darkness, which is eternal. Understood? And as we understand, dark matter, dark energy, what we call the world of matter, or the world of light, so to speak, only makes up 10% of or the visible universe only makes up 10% of existence. Everything else, and that which birthed light is darkness, but it's not respected in this society, because, as I say, you've got us as the children of the black light, and then you've got those of the amber light, understood? Yeah, those children of fire. And so there's an opposing view, but I say we gave birth to it all. Everything comes out of blackness. There's no opposite in that regard, other than from the word opposite not meaning equal, but to oppose, or forces that seek to hinder. So much like the planet is surrounded by various different spheres, which have pockets or openings that allow, in this case, lightning to pass through in a similar way, that soul or the Ba'h B'ah and the Ka'ah will make that transition or journey through these various different gates. And the gates, I suppose, are symbolic of dimensions where you've got certain beings that are looking to draw people into that realm or sphere in order to utilize that individual's energy like a battery for their realm. So the forces of the dead, remember, are designed to feed off of the forces of the living. So in our society today, is that you have got a separation between the kind of herbivores we talked about before, isn't it? Herbivores, and then we've got a more carnivorous type of beings or creatures or species that feed off of other creatures. Understood? You understand? So you can see within nature, you've got this kind of forces that deal with growth, creation, which means growth anyway. Growth, and you've got forces that deal with decay and death. Obviously, both are necessary, I suppose, for balance, but it doesn't mean equal. Now, so you see that, as I say, these gates are open up, ground to air, lightning, that it has to pass through different types of gates. So similar thing, just to show you correlation in that regard. Now, somebody asked a question last week, which was a good question, about rainbow children, things of that nature. So just very quickly revisiting that, how it relates to our stuff. So what you got to realize is a lot of information is out there, and as I suppose we're trying to convey in these classes, and certainly I think in the last one we talked about physical ethers as a representation of how races are interlinked, or how they're set up, I suppose, within existence to vibrate on a certain unique frequency, and it helps them to interact with their overlords or their creators or ancestors. And so basically, some information which is out there, you have to kind of go and check it out to the source in which it came from, because other extraterrestrials are informing their seeds and their children about certain things that we need to do. So in this regard, I suppose the rainbow children, and I did touch upon this last week, but the rainbow children is not necessarily a Wu-Sabat concept. When we deal with what we refer to as violet children, or when we're talking about children of the amber light, so to speak, what it's making reference to is here, if you see, in fact, let me step back for a second. Basically, we have to understand that sound, as this definition here from Actual Facts 18, is not just relating to what goes through a person's ears. Yes, you see this definition. Sound relates to what you receive from space and beyond. Very, very, very important. Very important. Yeah, we talk about our spiritual science, Wu-Sabat, sound, right reasoning. Obviously, sound has two meanings in English. It can also be like sound, what a person hears. But it's also like sound. What is strong? Foundation. Understood? Yes? So something that's solid, sound. So when you're dealing with the blackness, etc., you're dealing with the foundation of all, or the world of things, which in this society they call nothing, but it's the world of things. Some things are produced out of the world of things. Understand? So sound relates to that, or other words saying it is vibration, isn't it? Because if you say about the Big Bang, for example, in space, so we talk about the Big Bang, but there are many Big Bangs. There's no air in space. So what was the sound being made? There's no air. Yes? Air is the medium for sound. So if you're in space and there was a Big Bang, you're not going to hear what it sounds like. So there's a vibration of energy, clearly, that is being carried by way of vibration that is to be picked up. And clearly, how you would, as we would say, hear it, or better maybe yet receive it, you would have to have the mechanism or the ability to interpret that which you've been received, and so, that which is being received. So you can think a being, i.e. the Negroid or Nadjar-u, who has melanin, which is a manifestation of all light energy, has the ability in some way, shape or form, or is designed to pick that up, because we came from that. Hence why we look the way we look. You understand? So we're interpreting that, but if you're ignorant to it, I think the word is rahal. You understand? If you're ignorant to it, understood? Yeah, ignorance. Yeah, ignoring the facts, ignoring the things around you. Yeah, the spell spells spiritual ignorance and racial blindness. Spiritual ignorance. To ignore this world of energy which is out there. Paying no attention to it in religion. Pay no attention to it at all. Understood? But yet getting nothing back. People can say they have faith, etc. But obviously your own power or your own mind has the ability to produce things. Now the game that they play here is with the words as well. So they say infrasound. So infra, as you can see there in the etymological breakdown, is under or below, correct? And then we say ultrasound. So the normal human being hears between 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Yeah, the planet itself is vibrating at about 8 hertz. So you can't hear the vibration of the planet to be in sync with it, understood? So therefore, there are mechanisms that need to be put in place to create what they call harmonic resonance, so that you are in sync with it, and you're vibrating in the same kind of frequency range as it. So sometimes when you hear a certain tune, you're talking about this last week, remember the music that you like, sometimes when that feeling of it gives you goosebumps or whatever, because certain tones within the music are in harmonic resonance, or they have the frequency of when the sperm hit the ovum in your creation. Understood? So that vibrational rate or sound, it relates to the music that you like. You understand? Which makes you a unique individual, because we are in a certain range of sound, but obviously we are unique insofar as what makes us individuals. That was a unique form of creation which you celebrate every year, falsely called your birthday, and it's you're only born once, so every year after that it's clearly the anniversary of that day. Now, infra, under, ultra, beyond. Yes, correct? Or above, some might say. Now, when you go to light, they do the complete opposite. So when I say infra, so in sound, that would denote smaller frequencies, correct? Yes, 20 hertz, 0 to 19 hertz or whatever. That would denote smaller frequencies, or half a hertz up to 19 hertz. That would denote smaller frequencies. But here, they use the word infra in terms of light as under again, which obviously what the word means. But this is dealing with larger frequencies. And then the ultra is dealing, and then ultra in sound deals with the larger frequency ranges. But when you do light, infra means the larger ones, and the ultra means the smaller ones. And so it get confusing just because of the way they use the definitions, etc. And as I say, trick you, etc. So the black light, or the visible light spectrum, as you know, is between 700 and 400 nanometers. This is why there are things within existence that we can't see, because we're not picking them up because of the way in which bad information is one, and secondly, the way in which our senses have been wired. So, man, this is kind of the whole of the visible spectrum, as they would have it, or not the whole of the visible spectrum, the whole of the ultramagnetic spectrum here, and then the visible range is just a small piece of it here. So there are obviously things that exist which are there which we can't see. We may pick them up in other ways, but are we interpreting them? You understand? So it's not always things that are spooky, spiritual, that or can't understand it. It's just as a science to it, which obviously has Sabaeans or people are say interested in this doctrine or whatever the case may be should start to be curious about, and it's forcing you to move out of that kind of religious mindset and get back into scientific understanding, etc. Not that today's modern science is perfect, but it's at least in some aspects. If you put away some of the biases that are within it, are seeking to find facts about a certain type of scenario or situation. So you can understand why you can't see. So children of violet light, as you would have it, is defined in Wu-Sabat as children of the black light, because the black light is the visible. It's the last aspect of the visible range before you go into darkness, or as I say, sub-frequencies beyond the normal human being's sight ability. And in fact, when we're in the dark and so we might open our eyes, can't see anything, but it takes a few seconds or whatever for our eyes to adjust to that environment. In fact, we're designed better to see in darkness than we are in light environments. What we're picking up is something called visual purple. So we're picking up energy within that dark environment, which is that black light. So we come from that black light perspective. The society veers you away from it because of misinformation, misunderstanding, ignorance pertaining to the darkness. The darkness has always been bad, negative, evil, and obviously that's emphasized, isn't it, within the language, black market, black male, all these type of words that you'll be familiar with have a negative connotation connected to them. As opposed to, on the other range, so this is the fastest, so blue, for example, is the fastest color. When you talk about color, they talk about particles moving in darkness at a certain speed. That's what determines their color. So that particle, the fastest moving particles is blue, obviously on into violet, and then beyond is ultraviolet, correct, on this side. And then on the slowest within the range is red. And so beyond that is an infrared. So the waves then, because they're measuring it from tip to tip, obviously are much larger, like television waves, radio waves. So they exist, you just can't see them. Obviously your television has the ability to interpret, isn't it, those waves that are being, or that energy being broadcast on that frequency. The television, the radio, obviously has the ability to interpret these frequencies. So you're talking about a being who is the manifestation, in terms of the Nadjar-u, who's a manifestation of all light, has the ability to interpret all of those frequencies, but clearly we're in a state of forget. Now, but on the other range, you talk about amber light children, and this is children of the fire, or the amber light. You see that again, we've talked about this before, but if you think about the word British, for example, and where the word phonetically comes from, the Barif part comes from the Hebrew word Barif, it means covenant, the Brit part, Barif, shorthand for Barif, and Ish is Hebrew, it means male, I-S-H, if you want to use the English sort of equivalent of the transliteration equivalents. Ish means fire, but Ish always also means male, I-S-H, I-Y-S-H, if I was looking at that, for transliteration. So Ish, phonetically, fire. Ish also means male, obviously Ishasha, female, so on and so forth. So you've got it meaning fire, the sound phonetically, and it ties into their Bible, in their story, Safaf 14, Isaiah 14 verse 12, is it chapter 14, verse 12, the bright morning star, and then it the same being Revelation 22 chapter 16, they call Jesus the bright morning star, understood? So that's tying into that, for their understanding, is tying into the amber light of fire, understood? And how they destroy or they've certainly used fire in the past, and today that fire is now missiles and bombs and things of that, to destroy prehistory, so they can rewrite a new story, obviously in their image and after their likeness, to establish their authority. Remember the words of our masters expressing how they established that. Remember, author, authority, authentic. You don't have enough authors, you don't become the authority, you don't decide what is or what is not authentic, understood? And so the light, the consuming fire, not the black light, but the consuming fire, is what they celebrate. understood? And how, remember, they infiltrated secret societies like Freemasonry, etc., the Illuminati, those versions of that illuminated ones. They infiltrated secret societies, so on and so forth, to move their dial to the worship of Lucifer, who is no one other than Nana of the Sumerian doctrine, an extraterrestrial of the Sumerian doctrine, Nana, you understand, whose name itself means master of fire. So, excuse me, so we see this shift, and this is where it's talking about violet and amber like children, and then we talked about golden children, very special children born, where that is dealing with interception. So where our extraterrestrials, I suppose, are using certain genetic configuration of children being born in, who can shift or will stand out within our community, so to speak, or our race, in order to upgrade us, obviously tune us in, assist us in the changes that are happening with natural nature. Say born between 1973 and 2003, and this happened in the past, and happened today. Say Tutankhamun or Tutankhamun. They say Tutankhamun, proper tones, was one of those children for that generation. You have to understand, even this universe, as you can see there from this excerpt from Dimensional Shift, when that big bang happened to create this universe, there are many universes, but when that big bang happened, remember, it created, just like you have an octave, it created 8 tones. Those 8 tones are symbolic of 8 different harmonic worlds, it's saying there, and then they subdivide into 8 different dimensions. Understood? So remember, at certain points, let's say, I don't know, the meteorites coming, Apophis, which potentially could hit Earth around 2030, 2035. I think there was an article recently in the news that talked about that they don't think it's going to hit now, it's going to pass, etc. Okay, well, we'll see if that is the case. It might not hit for another 100 or so years in terms of it coming a lot more closer. However, obviously, if you can jump to a different dimension, or you can jump within the same dimension, but you jump into a different harmonic world, obviously anything that hit here physically, you wouldn't be affected by, because you're on a different vibrating on a different frequency range, understood, than the one of the makeup of the physical that we're calling physical here today, where obviously the makeup of the particles, the matter here, which is really just another form of energy, is of a certain type of configuration. It's vibrating at a certain rate, which makes us locked in, understood, here physically. So there are much things that we don't see with our eyes or pick up with our senses that relate to that. And so, as I said last week with the golden children, they have to see or be they have to meet this Amun-Nabab Raya, who has the ability to differentiate between the different dimensions, understood? Different dimensions, different planes, you understand, of existence. And so understands the difference between the physical versus what is called a plane of force, for example. And once they then, because the configuration, once they interact with this individual, like, for example, when they talk about us being able to dance, or say that person's got soul, or whatever the case may be, that aspect of it is not, obviously one of the expressions of it is a person being able to dance in time. But as you know, the music has been messed around with and the frequencies have changed. So now Caucasians are batting up certain blacks on the dance floor, because the music has been subtly sped up and changed more to their vibration as opposed to ours. But you can still see, if you look closely, when you see, no, not to be racist in a negative way, but when you see a black person, white person dance together, there's a certain difference, you understand, a smoothness that the black person, if they can dance in time and they're a good dancer, if they was equal, there would still be a slight difference. And that's because the difference between doing moves and then this smoothness of being in tune with a certain frequency range. So that when you talk about soul, it's the ability to kind of lock in to a certain type of frequency. Now we express that we express that musically. And, you know, for true spirituality, it's not, I mean, dedication, discipline, and those type of things are important. But actually, music mastery, according to the master teacher, music mastery is one of the things that we all have to kind of do. You know, so people like myself who didn't think it was cool to play the trombone and things when we was growing up, because we wanted to do other things, put that down, you understand, and didn't master those instruments, have to now revisit it because it's part of one's spiritual development, one's spiritual mastery. They don't teach you that in the churches, have things and the mosque or whatever. In the mosque, they don't got no singing in there. In Islam, you're not supposed to sing, although calling to the adhan, calling the Muslims to prayer through the adhan, of course is singing. Of course it is. And the way they chant, etc., is a form of singing, but they say they don't sing. But there you go. Now, so in that regard, children of the Amber Light are those children of fire, aligned with the Illuminati, really. It's either of Mukasu or Caucasians or blacks who think like them. You understand? So many of blacks out there happy to be out there, you know, as you see in the music industry, entertainment industry in the main, that look like us but certainly don't think like us, and change the vibration. This happens a lot in the music industry, and they pay people millions of dollars or pounds or whatever to change the vibration, you understand, that sound set or whatever, which effectively moves us away from more natural sounds. You understand, auto-tune is one of those signatures, isn't it? And some of those who were the advocates of that are particularly wealthy and rich in his world today, you know, but everything has a reckoning at a certain point in time. So that was just to address that. So the rainbow is not our doctrine, but obviously you can appreciate that somebody talking about rainbow, which is a collective of all or white knights, is put through a prism. The collection of all of that together obviously produces a certain type of frequency, and you got to look at, well, who's advocating that and who's trying to convey that message to their children. To us, black light is all Nadjar-u, you know, align himself naturally in terms of their natural abilities, and then the golden children are a specific set designed, as I say, who once taught would have the ability to vibrate within any frequency range, as we talked about earlier. You need to pull our ancestral energy out of any dimension they're in, which they're not supposed to be, where they're being played upon, used, much like how we are today. We're being used as our energy is being used, or our emotional energy is being used to prop this society, isn't it? Be it work, be it our ideas are taken, and our pain and misery is used, called soul, to inform a lot of the popular music which is today, you understand? And that's based upon a lot of our pain, you know, where that comes from, specifically from the blues, etc. You know, that has informed a number of music genres today. So that's where our emotional energy, or the closest thing that we could say was more soulful, because we was crying out for, you know, the conditions that we found ourselves in. And you know, that type of real music hits harder, because that's where that soul is. But what happens is, seemingly, you know, there's not a lot of support for that. We then, as a people, we tend to leave it. Yeah, so we tend to discard it, move on to other more trashy music, and then what happens is now white people are now into that. You understand? So they're into the real stuff, so they come in there and now in those positions, you might go to a soul concert or whatever the case may be, you find not a lot of us are there. Yeah, or a lot of these music genres that we started, you know, we don't maintain the legacy of it. You understand? To control the benefits of it, we give it up. So a lot of the time, we have to be careful. We get tricked out of our position many times. Understood? And so many of the genres which we started, we don't benefit from. You understand? I'm still not in control of those systems. Yeah. So I don't know, when will we learn? That's the thing. The truth of things is being uncovered. So I suppose we are waking up slowly but surely. So again, this just re-emphasizes this about the 8 tones and how, as I say, certain structures that we had that were set up were designed, as I say, to create harmonic resonance. So those tones, as I say, certainly can't be picked up by the human ear for us to suppose to mimic or to sound like that. It creates resonance, so we're still tuning in the body itself, or the tet symbol which Arashta or Aset holds, is a tuning fork in its own right. Okay, so let's move forward, otherwise we will not get to where we need to get to today. So we touched a little bit about the opening of the mouth ceremony last class, and the deity Anap or Anubis, some refer to as, and then we were going into a little bit about how we was explaining how the master teacher has, cleverly been teaching us the safaf, or what they call, falsely called hieroglyphs, throughout the various different books, and we'd be surprised of how much actually is in there and how much is being conveyed. And certainly one thing to convey today, which I'm going to get into, is about the detail and getting into the mindset of the teacher that's been sent by our ancestors, because he is called the master teacher, or what we effectively refer to as the master teacher, as the master at teaching. But I think we have an obligation from that sacrifice to master what is being taught. Understood? And in order to do that, you have to kind of recenter, and that's through a process. Same people to copy it because I say to do it, but that's through a process. You understand? As a Nagaru, or a person who's not Nagaru but interested in this culture of Musbat, you have to make it your frame of reference. You understand? The master said to watch a film called what's it called? It's gone out of my head. It's just come on Netflix. Crazy Rich Asians. And decent film. I was talking about this last week. But interestingly enough, that film, which I won't spoil it, but for you to get into. But there's a conflict about individuals maintaining the kind of legacy versus having the freedom to do what you want to do. Do you understand? So some decisions that you make, it might not be what you personally want to. There's an aspect of it that might not be what you personally want to do, but there's an aspect of duty or maintaining the legacy. You understand? And this is the kind of conflict that human beings, and certainly us as Nagaru, who are trying to get back on the come up, so to speak, and restore us back to where we're supposed to be. A lot of sacrifices have to be made. You understand? Our parents made sacrifices when they came over here, forcibly or by choice, but limited choice, to come over into the West and establish themselves here. And then when they got here, found out, hey man, this ain't the land of milk and honey. Well, it might have been gone off milk. I'm saying, I don't know what honey. It might be land of gone off milk. You understand? Sour milk. Yeah, it's been sitting in the sun for 100 days. It might have been that kind of land of milk that they were talking about, but it wasn't the proper. How they made it seem. Understood? And they were met with hate that their ancestors placed in their genes. Understood? But still today, they can't understand why or why it's happening, because your God made you that way. God made you a hater. He put hate in the genes. That's what it says according to your Bible. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. So, let's say, it's talking about that kind of, culture, and what obviously we are, I suppose in one sense, what the master is re-establishing in that regard. But, as I say, in order to understand or to put that solution where it needs to be, which is why it starts off as a self-help solution in the first instance, right knowledge, right wisdom, then reading to right understanding, to right overstanding, and for a select few, inner standing. But that is basically because you're centering or you're re-establishing back your information as the primary source. And not the white man's information. You understand, as we see it as today, or alternative source and forces. So Chinese, in the movie, there's a lot of cultural elements in there. So the Chinese, their religion, their ways of doing things, that's their source. They interact with everything else from that strong set cultural center. Understood? How does it match up with our thing, so to speak? How does what your behavior match up with what we are doing here? We're not moving from that. You understand? And we're the challenge is maintaining that core, because obviously when you interact with others, you could be influenced, changed, etc., etc. In the sense, some chose, no, we're not going to intermix with other people because it will change our culture. We're trying to keep certain things pure. We understand the importance of legacy. We understand the importance of staying in tune with our ancestral forces. You understand? So some have taken a more extreme approach throughout the ages to maintain that culture. Obviously, we are evidence of people who have lost that connection. It has to be rebuilt. So you have to kind of center and understand where this journey is going. And part of that is to master what the master is teaching. That doesn't mean belief. It just means master, investigate, look things up, etc. In order to that, pay attention to the details, as we were touching upon on a bit last week, and more emphasized today. So just finishing off about these sort of 9 gates. I think from various questions we did touch upon this last time, so I might not take too long here just from timing. So we were talking about what happens after death and some of the rules that relate to. So I think, we did cover that a lot last week, I think, in some of those questions. So I'm not going to go over this in loads of detail. Refer to part 1, or the scroll or class, the spiritual you after the physical you dies, just so that we don't not finish where we're at today. This definition, though, is important in verse 12 of the spiritual you after the physical you dies, which is about what is perfection, or tat mum, as you see it there. And so I think we touched upon this before, but you see, as to you, Nadjar-u Negroids, yes, once your spirit separates from your bashar flesh, you'll continue to progress until you attain tat mum, perfection of being as well as body, becomes pure inside out and outside inward. A clean, pure, akal mind, all your intentions rule your actions. Your deeds are pure without personal reason or gain. Ashuk, divine love, will give you a state of hanan, grace. So this is important. So imagine now that basically you got 24,000 cycles overstood. Yeah, up 24,000 cycles, some beyond that as well, but up to 24,000 cycles in order to get to a point where you're worthy of continuing that journey to get to perfection. So you might even reach it even at that point, where a simple thing appears simple but more difficult now to execute is that your intentions and your actions are supposed to match. Notwithstanding that, not only should they match, that they should be almost invisible. So there shouldn't be an ulterior motive or something behind it. And that's very difficult. So, for example, you think about, in the most tragic of circumstances, somebody who, a parent who lost their child, for example, and then they go out and set up let's say they lost their child through cancer, and then they go out and set up an organisation that deals with, supporting parents and children through getting through cancer. Beautiful intention, beautiful actions, but the intention there is not invisible, because the individual is obviously using that as a mechanism to alleviate their own pain. It's not to say there's no positive benefit from it. What I'm saying to you is that it's not pure intentional, because there's an intention behind it. There is a personal gain or reason, which obviously in a lot of things in our lives, of course, that will sit behind it, and it can work in the positive or the negative. You understand? But without it to be pure of intention and action, You understand? Like you see, I suppose, the sun 93 million miles away fulfilling its purpose. You know, most people who go about their daily lives do not direct their emotional energy and say thank you, you know, Pare, thank you for all that you can done and continue to do for us in terms of sustaining life here on the planet Earth. Most people do not do that. And so, yeah, they wake up in the morning, shit, man, I got, excuse me, my French, but I got things to do, I got, you know what I mean, this, that, 20, you know what I mean, I got many things to be cracking on with today. Understood? And so, that's what we're on. You know what I mean? Living our life, not even thinking about the environment. A lot of people, not all, but a lot of us not even thinking about the environment and how many thank yous we would have to say even before we woke up if we were true to what we were doing in terms of our mind, just to say, boy, thank you for raising nature. Thank you for waking me up today, that I've got the ability to do what I need to do, improve myself, so on and so forth. We don't do that. So when you look at the higher forms of beings or higher forms of life, in a sense, that's what they're even on a journey to achieving in that regard. If you remember, that it's a rubbish movie, but certain interesting principles in there. In Gods of Egypt, there was you had Horus, who was party boy, playboy, and then the more you rose, so you had Ray or whatever, or Ra, excuse me, in their depiction of it, and Ra was constantly working. He was pushing or trying to keep the lower forces from entering into the physical world in their, say, depiction of that trashy movie. But one thing they did do, remember Chadwick Boseman as the Nadjar-u was playing the Houthi. Interesting enough, you understand, or to in that particular movie, or Thoth, as they would have it there. So, as I say, it's a journey, and if it was easy, you wouldn't need as many opportunities, let's say, in terms of those cycles to perfect yourself or make it out of this particular realm. Okay, so I think we did touch upon this again. I think we did cover a lot of this in part one, just because of people's questions, which were good questions, and it came out in that regard. So I'm gonna move through this. Are there any questions? Yeah, are there any questions?
Yes, we have a question that came up shortly after you put up the slide with the death, the gates of death, and this is a question from Owen, and the question is, what are the gates symbolic of?
Excuse me. As I touched on earlier, there are different dimensions where there are beings in who would seek to feed off of, that's maybe the best word, feed off of that individual's energy. Now, how one might interpret that mentally is they're going to appear to the person as various tests based on potentially their own belief system, understood? And so the way to avoid that is to, I say avoid it, but the way is to keep focus on your ancestors who are waiting for you on the other side. So to not get taken, drawn in, understood, by these tests that are there. So you think about somebody who's of a monotheistic religious belief, for example, yeah, their ancestors could be waiting for them on the other side. But if at one of them gates, Jesus appears, you know what I mean, as a person masquerading as that and says, come, follow me, what are you going to do? You're going to follow the person because you believe that that's the interpretation of the divine. Now find yourself ending up where you ain't supposed to be. So that's what those gates can do, as you see that happens even now in the physical, where if you notice people receive called a mind's eye, but people receive visions and various things of that nature. Some people see stigmata, they see Mary with blood from bleeding from her palms, or Jesus appearing with blood appearing from their palms. And the question that the master posed, or told us to think about, well, why is it always that the person, when they receive that vision, it's always in the religion that they believe in? You know, why is it that the Christian never sees a vision of Buddha saying, come to them Yeah, Buddha came to me on the road. So the religion they don't believe in, it's the one that they always do. So the gates will manifest itself as ways or forms, as I say, of where certain beings are vibrating within those spheres and are trying to take advantage of, move you off the path, so to speak. So our focus would be on your ancestors because that's their responsibility to help you or guide you in the next level of existence. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, we have a question from Patricia that's going to be asked live.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. How are you doing, Patricia?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you very much. You mentioned earlier about the frequency.
Yes.
And it's something that I've thought of before. If you're say, normal African or Caribbean African, bouncing off a certain frequency like we're doing today, are there other Black people that are not on that frequency, and are they alien? Not human.
Well, as I said, we touched upon, I think in a previous class, some physical attributes that within, I suppose, a physical body, so like hybrids, for example, arguably some hybrids are of alien origin. I suppose you wouldn't be able to tell just off of frequency range because the human body is the human body. So it's like a skin or a suit, etc., that one puts on. Now, clearly, our suit has been designed to work with what we were before that suit was formed, i.e., you understand, we were soul, we were spirit, and we were etheric energy of a certain type, understood? And then that is now incarnated by way of our parents, and we find that now with a physical body designed for it on top. And so each individual race or whatever, their origin or what they are from an energy point of view, their physical structure is designed to match within their skin suit. So when you talk about behavior or the way people are acting in terms of frequency, well, you could be a Black person not on maybe quote unquote, I suppose, that kind of conscious or awake journey. You could be mentally dead, but it doesn't mean, so you could be vibrating by way of your actions on the wrong frequency. But if somebody schools you, gives you the right information, you start doing the right things, etc., then that can change, can't it? So, part of our strength, so to speak, and the correct vibration is not an individual frequency. Supposedly, it is a group vibration that we're seeking to create. You understand? Because we are many parts of the one group in that regard. So when we talk about getting on the right frequency, that frequency should want us to basically be aligned and want to work together to come back as a tribe, because we're a tribal people, you understand? A community people. But in this Western Hemisphere and frequency, it teaches you to be much more individualistic, you understand? And so, and it's set up in a way, isn't it, where the powerful have to subsist and feed off of the weaker, isn't it? You understand? So, and take advantage of the weaker in order to progress, you understand? And some people, that's their culture. Some groups, that is their culture. So if you're not of our race, we don't business, you understand? And that's how they think. And that's how they feed, and that's how they sustain themselves. So you can't tell necessarily whether somebody is alien in a skin suit or not all the time, because obviously their technological advancement, they know how to recreate the human body or structure, but sometimes there can be markers that may show that in terms of their behavior, because they can't replicate the technology as best as nature or natural nature can. Okay, is that your question answered?
Yes, thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, so, any other questions? Hurrah, Habab?
Yes. There's a question from. There's a question from. It's anonymous. Can you please elaborate on when you have an offspring who has a child with a neutrinoid Caucasian? I think the question says, can you please elaborate on when you have an offspring who has a child with a neutrinoid stroke Caucasian? That's the question.
So if I'm understanding the question, they asking what the child will be or what the outcome is. As I say, if basically, so we have gone through this before, but very quickly. Obviously, we as Nadjar-u or Negroid or pure Negroids, male and female, we were known as star children. So, if a Negroid male and a Negroid female come together and produce a child, it was known as a star child. Because we were terrestrial, or are, the terrestrial representations of the sun. Understood? So we're sun people. Yeah, you see various books, people of the sun, men and night, children, so on and so forth. We are the manifestation of the sun, or representations of the sun on earth. So when two of us came together and we produced a child, they were known as star children. A black man, or Negroid male, and a Caucasian female who vibrates up to the 6 ether range, because she is a woman and a female and a shapeshifter, her vibrational rate changes to match her man. So if a black male and a Caucasian female come together, the child they produce was known as a son of God. As if a Nadjar-u female comes together with a white male who is of vibrates at lower frequency, the lowest, in fact, of all humanoid species on the planet, at the fifth ether level. The woman, because she is a shapeshifter, and the black woman, or Negroid female, because she has the strongest genes on the planet, she adapts or drops her vibrational rate to match her man. So the man with the lower vibration is going to be even with Nadjar-u males, but the man with the lower vibration puts her fire out. Understood? And so they come together what is known as a son of man. Yeah. Obviously, if you were talking about a neutrinoid female, which memory serves me correctly, I think they vibrate up to 3 ethers. I'd have to clarify that. I think it's up to 3 ethers. It's certainly lower than 4. So remember, they have both genes inside of them. If you're talking about a mixed individual or person, so it really depends on what kind of vibration they're on. I suppose they could lean more towards their Mukasu side or lean more towards their Nadjar-u or Negroid side. But the reality is that Nadjar-u genes are dominant. So in that regard, obviously the Nadjar-u genes are going to be dominant in that situation. So depending on Nadjar-u gene is going to be dominant. So it really depends on how much or what's the primary factor. Is the individual who's mixed more Nadjar-u, more recessive, or are they more dominant as to whether a son of man is produced in a certain instance, if it's the woman is black, or if it's a male that's going to be produced, then you're looking at a raising, isn't it, of vibration. If the male is black, so you're looking at raising vibration. If the woman is black and the person who on the other side of the thing is mixed race or whatever, then it depends on, as I say, whether the person's more recessive or more dominant as to what that vibrational rate is going to go to, because you have a number of factors in the 4 generations that you have to look at as to what the person's going to look like. But principally our genes are dominant, and they should transform up if they've still got a sort of heavy element of Nadjar-u in them. Do you understand? even maybe if their mentality is not of Nadjar origin, you understand, in that regard. And then 2 Caucasians were considered to be, or their offspring was considered to be the son of the devil. And that, when it says devil, you see that can have a lot of hyper conversation to it, but that means basically that anything that disturbs your definition of peace. So to us as ancient Egyptians at that particular point, the devil was associated with bad bacteria, or bacteria that you couldn't see, that cause diseases, much like coronavirus and things that we see at the moment, where it can be passed on to an individual, but you can't see it. You understand? So you could kill somebody through that. And obviously one of the ways to stop the virus from spreading, it's not the only way, but one of the ways is, they say at least, is hygienic practice, isn't it? Keep your hands washed, certain things, because the virus doesn't live within a certain environment for a certain amount of time. So wash at a certain temperature of water, so on and so forth. So, and cleaning. You understand? So that was what was associated. Hence you get the term germ man. Yeah, because they were interested particularly in breeding out negativity out of their genealogy and manifesting it in a person that you could see. So you could say, hey, no, don't mess with that. That is the physical manifestation of syphilis, you understand, or the physical manifestation of whatever other diseases. So you could see it and then know, you understand, oh, danger. You know what I mean? Like there's certain signs, isn't it, in nature that you know not to mess with. Sometimes you see red on an animal, or you understand, yellow, or certain things that they can be triggers, isn't it, or signs to know don't mess about. That could be poisonous. So that is what the complexity around that. If I think that's what your question relates to, about outputs of individuals. So as I say, more people on the planet Earth appear, even though we're called minorities, more people appear on the Nadjar-u scale of things than they are on who consider themselves to be white. So if you've got one cell of our genes, there's potential hope. Say use the word hope loosely, but there's a pathway for you. There's not use the word hope, but there's a pathway for you potentially to still be within the dimensional shift of the races that are to survive that shift. You understand? Once it's taken place, which happens every 24,000 years. So that's how powerful our genes are. But as I say, everybody doesn't think that way. Racism has, you can't be. There's people who want to be white, like the Gaul who wants to be like the vampire, wants to be inducted into the kind of order to be like a vampire. So this is what happens. There are many ghouls amongst us who wish to be white in all of the different races across the planet. But the white person doesn't consider, or white people don't consider themselves to be white, even if they're mixed race. As a mixed race person, you can't choose to be white. You understand? Think about the kind of Meghan Markle. As much as you're making up noise now, when you first came, you didn't say you was black. You understand? You didn't say that. You know what I mean? But obviously, you got treated. That's what happens to a lot of mixed race people. They get treated like a black person when it comes to racism, and remind their ass that, see, the Kakasu or Mukasu does not accept you into their world of things. You understand? They don't accept you. You know what I mean? That's what was taught by their God, isn't it? According to their Bible. Yeah. Hate was put into the genes in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And then Abraham told his sons, do not go out there and mix your seed. So they wanted to keep the seed pure. Yeah, this is the birth of racism here, according to their story. Yeah, so in that regard. So that's a combination of things really to answer your question. If it's not, then please ask further. Any other questions?
No further questions.
I do have a follow-on question from Owen, and it says, the beings at the 9 gates, is this in the Quran symbolic of being questioned in the grave after you pass on, from the Islamic perspective, I mean?
That's their traditions, but as I say, that certainly, the book does open up to 2 beings where some of those questions could be asked on as you pass through some of those gates, which is why I said or mentioned earlier, your focus would be on what's real, not on what's fake. You understand? So those questions that could be answered, you would either dismiss them or ignore them with the right mentality because you know it's not real. You understand? So your focus is on what's real. Religion is not real insofar as the characters in it are not real. They've not proven them to have existed. You understand? So, I mean, it wasn't a man named Muhammad 1400 years ago, but other than that, these other characters, there's no Moses been proven to exist, Jesus, etc., etc. So if your focus is to be fooled by that, you understand, you can turn around and say, well, they ain't even real. And your focus is on what's real, i.e., I'm focused on my great-grandmother, I'm focused on my great-grandfather, who are waiting for me, who are already established a connection with. That's my focus, that's my thing, and that's what I'm going to be drawn to. You understand? You can't move me off of that. Yeah? But if there's ambiguity in a person's thinking, then you could be thrown off that path. So bad information, isn't it, is really, or religious information is setting the person up, yeah, to be food in this world and the next one. Yeah, because at no point is a person connecting in that way with their relatives in that regard, you understand, or that focus. Yeah, we bypass that, don't we? We jump over that and give the glory to God. Yeah, when it's our mum and dad who sacrificed, through us, mum and dad, as far as we're concerned, responsible for why we're here right now, even if they don't get along with each other, etc., etc. You understand, under those rules in nature. So yes, there's some correlation to that, but as I say, the way to overcome it is to keep focus on what's life for your ancestors. All right, okay. I'm going to move through this. So if you want more information on spiritual you after the physical you dies, seek out the book or class on YouTube of the same title, Master Secret. Because I need to move on, otherwise we're not going to get to where we need to be today. So let me jump through into the 9. So, sort of reminding people really from Naturally for Energy about the power of symbols and symbolism and how they were used in ancient or Kadem Muhammad, or Kadem Muhammadu, the ancient Egyptians themselves, how they used it. And as you see, as it's explained there, we use the mass symbol to explain the example of the Olam, Sakhamat, hidden powers of the visible yet invisible bara, space. So obviously symbols can mean different things to different people, and it's one of the ways in which we kept knowledge away from the fool as well. And so our mindset has to be to get back into what these symbols mean. In fact, we talked about the message of Yaanuwn was the fact that, okay, we knew our prayers were real, we knew our prayers were, our meditation was real, that it was being answered because of the manifestation and the understanding being given back to us of these symbols that have existed, in some cases for many thousands of years and beyond, to represent or to sink us in to some degree with the world that we can't see. So if you imagine that we just talked about previously about harmonic resonance, so we're sinking in, we're shaping our physical, tuning ourselves back in to natural nature from frequencies that we can't, we're not hearing audibly, for example, if you're thinking about in the terms of sound. So when we look at those pyramid structures, for example, and the openings that were in these pyramids, when a person was standing in a chamber, for example, the wind used to pass by this window, and similar like how you blow air across the top of the bottle and it makes a sound. With just that wind passing across those openings, the chambers were augmented to amplify frequencies between half a hertz up to 19 hertz. Now this is the resonant frequency, or the most prominent frequency within that, is on the F note, and it's the most prominent frequency of DNA. So it's designed to amplify you, sink you in, Understood? And so if you think about it, these symbols, the visible symbols, are doing a similar thing. You understand? So what do they mean? Is to draw you from this world into, you understand, the world of the darkness. You understand? Have you thinking in that way? Because a picture tells the story of 1,000 words, but it also can give you ideas and inspiration or whatever to, right, okay, I get it now. I understand that. Okay, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And you see the work, the mind of the Nadjar-u, understood? How they think, giving you clues as to some of these higher states of existence. How, let's say, you have a genetic right, I suppose, to make your way to that journey, depending on the choices that one chooses to make here in the physical. So you can see here, and some of this, the nine's quite it's an old book, but it's got some older Sabaean words in it, so they may have been changed now to different words. So when we sort of pick it up, we'll just make that correction where it's needed. Understood? So Musbat-u is what is called now. There's a different word which we'll get into for what it is now. But Musbat-u is what it's being called now. And so here, I think the point being made is that sometimes it's not a book giving away all the things that he does, but you've got to pay attention to how the master teacher works. It's not all the time that it's some book or book of symbols. That's how sometimes we've been trained. Book of symbols. And because a person wants it all packaged nicely in one thing in the dictionary, and I'm sure at a certain point it will come like that. But how it is now is being given to you in parts. So you've got to pay attention, even though, to what's being given in certain books. There's a number of different books that we see. Some of the safaf, not hieroglyphs, safaf, the tone is safaf. These safaf are being communicated, and there's obviously a story behind these symbols. So, interesting enough, we're looking on the front of the book, and in terms of us paying attention to details, I suppose what we got here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we got 9 symbols here. You understand? So we could have easily jumped past the book and just want to get into the detail. But as we said last week, Fatima Miriam reminded us and gave us that wisdom that you judge a book by its cover and its contents. Not don't judge a book by its cover. Yes, judge it by its cover and its contents. And so you can see in this regard that this is important for full and proper understanding. And actually, you're paying attention to somebody who's taken the care and the time to make the cover like this. So what are they trying to convey? What is being expressed by Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn as a result of here? Because symbols can tune you in, correct? If you know what they're doing, tune you into a certain frequency. It can help you to understand the contents of the book. It's setting context, getting you on, as Sister mentioned earlier, it's getting you on the right vibration, getting you on the right frequency, mindset coming into it. Yeah? You're not on that consumer mindset, people. You're not on that. We're on mastery. Yeah? I'm reading for self and I'm reading for the race. Because if I improve, the race improves. Understood? Yeah, not on a consumer mindset. Okay, you paid money for the book. Great. You understand? Actually, if this was sold by some Caucasian author, you'd be probably paying £100, £200 for the same thing. And people paying out their money, as a regard for that because of this secret information. No one's trying to teach you this. No one in schools going to the black kids, changing the curriculum, trying to teach them the safaf. Trying to teach them the greatness of their ancestors. They want to teach them about slavery and, you understand, where a woman sat on the bus. Understood? You understand? Not no disrespect to that, but, if I get on a bus and I'm tired and I sit at the front, I might fight a little bit of racism because I'm tired. You understand? At the end of the day, the black people at that time should have owned the whole bus service. Integration for us was probably our undoing to some degree at that time, because we had things of our own, but even then, they don't want to leave you alone. You know, Black Wall Street is an example of that. And said, okay, you don't want us to interact, you don't want us to integrate or whatever the case may be. You want segregation, and even when we've got segregation, you still don't want to leave us alone. So what make up your mind what it is. Yeah, make up your mind what it is. But we had things. They kind of, again, try to trick you out of your position. Become the first black person to do this. Become the first black woman to do that. The first this, the first that. Understood? We've done been the first. Already. That's why we're here. That's why we look like where we look. We've done been the first. I'm trying to be the first in your world. We're already the first world people. Actual facts. And first will be last. First will be last, and last will be first to go. That's how the rules in nature works. Anyway, so it's about us paying attention to details, and we see some of these symbols being given to us in various different scrolls, which we have to kind of, okay, I'm seeing here there's some English words, I'm seeing here there's some Sabaean script, and we got pictures. And so what I'm saying is that it's a case of us seeking understanding of all of it, you understand, when it's being given to us in a certain way. So we have to log things in our mind, not because the mind can be tricky like that, you understand. If you don't know something, your brain is tuned to ignore it, you understand. So you have to kind of turn it in a certain way to say, even if you don't fully understand, you have to be looking and seeing, what does that mean, and pose a question almost in a sense to the subconscious mind, because whatever question you pose or you set or you seed in that arena, the brain is going to be looking for it, or subconscious mind is going to be looking for it, that answer, irrespective of whether you're consciously looking at it. Sometimes it might pop up, weeks, days, weeks, months later, because it's still working. You set it to task with certain things, understood? And so you put it to work. So, but you have to be now, I suppose, as Sabaeans or people who are seeking to master this doctrine, you have to be much more conscious around, or deliberate one, let's say, about mastering certain things, so that you're, a lot of the, if not all of the answers that we're looking for are in the doctrine, even as it pertains to life and things we're going through or whatever, but we're not programmed as the first thing we go to. So you have to kind of, again, make that the center of who you are, so that you're looking for those answers in that way. And then I use the word guided loosely, but it is, certain times you're looking for an answer for something. Boom. You don't put too much thought in it. In a being will, okay, it's in such and such. So you're open to receiving that kind of frequency and getting the answers we're looking for. So there's a level of intentionality that's also required. So we see here, again, certain symbols that are being conveyed. So we see here a safaf, ka'a'u, you understand? So in that regard, a very new kind of word or configuration. And so here we see the kind of horn-tailed viper, understood? And that in actuality, that is the equivalent, I suppose, to the fa, or the English F, but it also means from. So the symbols can have a phonetic sound in terms of how they are positioned, but each one of them also has its own individual name. So they can be configured in ways where the symbol in itself in isolation has a name, and you might look into the horned viper, for example, and horned viper, horned viper, and look into that. And okay, what's this creature about? Why did they associate that with that? What's the nature of how this creature moves on Earth? What does it feed on? You're learning certain things about it. Why did they use that? You're curious once again, and that curiosity is getting into the mind of our ancestors. It's getting aligned. So when certain things, after you're going to pick up certain things, going to become more part of your being. You're going to open you up to recognize these things because you're in their mindset. You understand? Or it's become now a part of you in their thinking. Understood? They're not just, I don't understand what it is. When are they going to put out a dictionary with all the pictures and all that in there? No. You understand? Because you can't wait for that. It's there in front of you. You understand? And so you've got a connection that can get you those answers as they're needed to. You just may not be telling other people it until you've confirmed it prior, as we talked about inspiration, revelations, attributes of reasoning, verified against what? Actual facts. But in terms of your own study. Okay, so this is a fa sound. The sun, a ray. And then we've got obviously the ka symbol. So here, of or from, like from as in birthed, you understand? Yeah. Of the sun spirit, you understand? Or of the personality of the sun, which is us, Africa, or Africa, people and a place. New mindset or understanding. Here we see another symbol. I'm just giving you a few in that regard, but this is I suppose this symbol here, Zanad. And so again, forearm, but it's has an A sound to it. You understand? Here the mouth there, the Sabaean word Rafam. Yes, we've got the mouth, and then we see the Rayay symbol there, or the symbol for the sun. Understood? So this is your Ra or Ray or Ra sound, and this is a Ah, even though Rafam, which yes, it does begin with the Ra sound, but then you've got here the Zanad, yeah, which is the forearm with a hand. I think we showed you last week that you had in one sense they had that symbol with another symbol on top of it, and it changed the meaning of it. Yeah, we were looking at that last week, so it changed the meaning of it. But this here, you see the pure symbol where it's being used as an Ah sound for Ra. Or Ray, or say Ra, but it's pronounced Ray, properly pronounced Ray as in sun ray. So we see various symbols here. Interestingly, yeah, we see the one that we showed you many times before of your ancestors or your etheric ancestors. So you've got your physical ancestors, which is your Muslafu or Salafu, they say in the language, and then you've got the Muntharu, which is the overseers, perceived as sons, but shown as three flags in the safaf. Yeah, so you can get a single flag, which is showing an athar, or a single flag with the upside half or semicircle there, understood, which is the tat symbol. So that denotes feminine principle, correct? Yeah, so Nathar tat. Yeah, Nathar for what we consider to be male, Nathar tat. Yeah, feminine or female. Yeah, feminine always larger than the masculine or encompassing, one might say. And then you see you've been given another symbol here for a full circle, here semicircle, so filled in, which is Nabab or master, in that regard. So clearly we're being given certain things, and then in some of the books, what do we see here? Okay, interesting. We see more symbols, which we've broken down before. So you see here the Palel stool. You understand? It's called a Palel, yeah, but that's a Pa sound. Now, so in the language, you see here Pa, yeah, Nabab, yeah, obviously, and Yaanuwn. You see that here. But in here, we're being given the hieroglyphs again, isn't it? Or the safaf script. So you see here Palel, Pa. What does this mean now? Well, we just was looking at it, correct? The symbol for Nabab. Yeah, master, Nabab. Yeah, obviously in the form of a male in this regard. We see the symbol for two reeds, which is a ya sound, you see these bowls here known as the Nu bowls, Nu bowls. And we know that has symbolism. Women, or sacred feminine, for example, in triple darkness, the birthing of a child, 3 stages, etc. We know that it also is linked to existence, space, matter, and time. Yes, so the three nu bowls we see there. So that gives a nu sound. So we see ya, nu, and then we've broken this down many times before. So solid, horizontal line in that regard is naturally occurring water. You see there blue, so that's referencing the Blue Nile, and so it gives a n sound, like 9. Or they say Nile, but it's really 9 river. So it gives a n sound. So Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, understood? And then we see of heaven and earth, not ruling heaven, but of heaven and earth. So coming from Outformation information. So we see here the symbol for the heavens. And so that symbol with the heavens, there we see with the star is symbolic of obviously that Sirius or Sirius star constellation there, and then the symbol of the heavens there, and then this symbol is of earth. Yeah, so you see them positioned a certain way here. So let's say Patat, there would be the heavens on its own, but with that symbol is tying it into the Sirius star constellation. Do you understand? Because or star, excuse me, the heavens per se. And so that is Natat or Nut in that regard. So we know in this regard that our ancestors in here, a line are coming from Orion and Sirius star constellations specifically. So that's letting you know there that Outformation and, as I say, information here on Earth. You understand? In terms of even the way it's positioned above. So you can read it in English and think Master of Heaven and Earth. They're tripping. You understand? He's saying he's the Master of Heaven and Earth. No, he's saying that's where he's from. And even so, remember we talked about that hourglass symbol, isn't it? Look at the way it's positioned. So I'm receiving information from outside coming in, and then I'm now spreading it outwards, isn't it? To permeate the planet in one sense. So symbols are a certain way, and we talked about this last week as well. You see it in here, in the cartouche, which is there to protect the tone, protect the tone or the name, in that regard. So again, a lot of symbols here. Again, we see that the horned viper in that regard. So let's so look here. If you see, we can see here, this is a symbol for Tefnut. Understand who they call Tefnut, whose name means moisture, but in tones Tafaf Natat. Excuse me. So tat, we see two symbols there, isn't it? So again, that n sound, natat there. The tat symbol there, obviously on that side, I suppose, tafaf, text symbol here, a faf, we saw it there, you understand, as a f sound or f. So tafaf, natat, tafaf, natat, you see it? You understand? So these are things that, that's just interesting. Yeah, and then you see it here in another aspect described where we see it representing mitochondrial DNA. So we see a kind of viper here spitting forth, isn't it? Yeah. The water or the moisture in this regard. So this is Tafnut or Tafnut, you understand? A symbol symbolizing mitochondrial DNA. You understand? So they're spitting forth, which I think somebody asked a question last week about Atum. Atumtat Ubakar, if I remember correctly, asked a question about Atum, or the deity Atum. And obviously in our story, it represents the Big Bang, or the sort of major Big Bang. And interesting enough, as I say, that force or vibration, isn't it? It's being carried through from the very source of things through that mitochondrial DNA, because obviously we have a physical soul and a physical spirit in that regard. You understand? We talked about that last week. There's a ruh soul, the physical soul, or fired by the breath, which you get from your father to your mother. But the real soul, the Ba'ah, I say real soul, but the soul, the Ba'ah, the Achach, the Ifrit being, and the Ka'ah, you understand, which is the kind of real you get that from your ancestors. Research, you get that from your Muslafu on into the Nadjar-u, which the Achach has obviously been there from the beginning or source, let's say, of all things, birthing then the Ba'ah, birthing then the Ka'ah, understood. So you can see how different symbols are combined to tell a story for us. Yeah, and as I say, in different systems, they create their own language and systems. Obviously, when we do it now, it seems there's a problem. Why are you doing that? How does that mean that? Who gave you permission to do that? But we're filled in a world of symbols where somebody has decided to create things that represent, more words. And so, for example, in the scientific community, they got symbols that represent, mathematical equations. They've got symbols that represent elements and things of that nature. Well, who gave them permission to be the authority to establish that system? When we establish something new, all of a sudden there's 20 questions. When nobody questioned what the Mukasa was doing. You understand? Nobody questioned why is that named that. You just accepted it, believed it. You understand? Because of those words, author, authority, authentic. Now, when you comes along and there's change now, I'm not saying don't question. I'm saying question everything. Don't just question it because somebody told you to question. So then you question them. You question the person who told you to do it. You know what I mean? So we have a problem, obviously, as a people, and it's a human, maybe frailty, that if you tell a person too much truth, that person can end up hating you. Yeah? So you create a frenemy. Friend because you told them the truth, but they hate you for doing it at the same time. So you create a frenemy. So a friend and an enemy at the same time. You've got to get away from that because we're supposed to be in a process of healing. So there's some truths that we need to be told, personal or otherwise, that if we're ready for growth, then we're gonna accept what comes our way and not judge it positively or negatively. I'm talking about people who have not got your best interests at heart. I'm talking about those who have got your best interests at heart. I want to see you improve. And sometimes that learning process may be difficult. Sometimes it may be easy. Yeah? So we can see another context in the way that symbol has been used to represent specifically mitochondrial DNA. And we see, as I say, safaf and tat in there, teflon, as they say, within there. Yeah. Again, let's look at maybe a few more of these. So, we see the end. So that, again, you see a little confirmation of different things there as well in that regard. Here we see, I suppose, a flowering reed. And so that gives a sort of sound, you know what I mean? A hard A, so it's a sound, not just an A. Hard A sound in terms of the flowering reed. And then you see the solid field Nile there in that regard. And then we see this symbol here representing, I suppose, MN. You understand? MN. Which is known as, I suppose, it can make a few things. Ties into the deity Min, Manan in terms of endurance there. And you see the word for phallus or penis is Maman. And, which I'm not going to go into today, but there's even here in this, the way the configuration of the squares are, that's a game. So it represents a game from our culture in the same called Sanat. Understood? So the configuration. So interesting enough, we see a chessboard today, yes, and we see a checkers board today, but we never question where that came from. Guess what? And came from our stuff once again, and we see it here in this symbol or the configuration of the symbol. It represents a game that, as I say, denotes the passing of time. So there's a lot of stories in here that I'm sure when the master's out, you can do a whole class. You know what I mean? Just teaching you about even just what this one deity. You know what I mean? Like a whole class, multiple classes. You just sit here talking about the hidden secrets of Amun, etc. So the point is that in this regard, we're showing interest in detail to at least cause our subconscious mind to start to work and consider these things. So it leaves us open now to I want to master that. Not closed to it. As I opened the book, I'd even look at this. I kind of looked at it. That looked nice. I opened it and completely ignored what was on the front of the cover. And look, just even today, there's a madness now. We've uncovered a whole. We've uncovered a whole thing, set of stories, which each of them symbols is a major story in itself. So here, interesting enough, look, we see, which we broke down last week, we went through that, the riddle of the Sphinx, her name, Arashtat, or Ashtat, Almighty Throne, and we see these symbols at the top here, and what do we see? Let me see it right there again. See that symbol there? Does it say Isis? Well, I'm not saying I know the answer to this, but you need to know what this symbol is, or what it's called. We know that this is the what symbol? This is the tat symbol. So, where's the cis? Is cis our tones? Maybe where's the cis in there? So, you understand? So these things, again, so these things, as I say, they tell a different story to what the person's telling, you understand, in the translation. And why is this important for us? Because what I'm going to show you a little bit later on is reading it in English is one thing. Reading it in Sabaean is something else. Understood? So the purpose of it, I could go into the 9, I could talk about, the different chapters, which we'll get into a few of them, and tell the stories behind it. But the purpose today is to get you to focus on detail, to get you to focus on what the master is doing, why he's doing it a certain way. Because you say those who are new to it, maybe not so, they're finding out, they're going to start their journey. But certainly those who are a bit further along in the process, you're saying you're the master's students, but are you doing what the master is telling you to do? Are you mastering what the master is telling you to do? You understand? Because he didn't call himself a teacher, he said master teacher. You understand? So that means mastery. That means looking beyond. You're interested, as I say before, the cause that cause and effect. You're not interested just in cause and effect. We're going back into the blackness, which is why that symbolism means. Yeah? Other races might be looking at this and thinking, what does this translate to? You know what I mean? What does it mean? And they'll supply their own meaning to it. We're interested in where that symbol's taking us mentally. Yeah, because it's reconnecting us back with the source. It's another method to reconnect you, isn't it? Yeah, with the darkness, in the blackness. It's open a doorway for us to think about in that regard. Understood? So, any questions? Keep going on.
Right. We do have 2 questions from the same person, Corinne, and they're before you went into the 9. She wanted answers to the questions. So even though it's taking you back from the 9, I'll give you the questions. So the first question is, how can we protect ourselves from evil, our enemies? Take Dr.York, for example. Was he able to predict what happened to him? How can he set himself free? That was the first question. And the second question, she's quoting you here, saying, you mentioned give glory to God when there is a God. So, that's it.
I can't remember when I said that. I did say it, but I was being I don't want to use the word sarcastic, but and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm saying insofar as give glory to nothingness or people give glory to God. But in ancient times, and what we're relearning today, for example, if our child was sick and we took them to a wab or priest, or in today's time we take them to a doctor or whatever, if it's a doctor's skill, knowledge, etc., that was applied, that then led to the healing of our child, you understand? We wouldn't say give glory to God. We're going to thank the doctor, because it's a doctor who spent whatever years mastering their craft, you understand? Knowing how to apply, diagnosing the situation, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that go behind the diagnosis before, it's applied to the person, and the person recovers from what it is they're suffering from. Even with all of the challenges there are with the medical system and how it applies to us, there are certain medicines or things that we go to the doctor, we get fixed. Let's be honest, you understand? And some of those solutions are based on nature. What happens is people give glory to God if the outcome is positive, and then they give glory, but they're upset with the devil if it doesn't go that way. Understood? Whereas, say, we didn't do that. We thanked the hand of the doctor, specifically. Obviously, we all come from the source of all existence, and we acknowledge that. But we can't ignore. We're not ignorant to the fact it takes a lot of training and skill, etc. In some cases, natural ability to be a healer. So you have to respect those details. That's what we were on, as opposed to throwing that energy out into nothingness, which you see actors and actresses, footballers are. Thank God for this award that I just got. Okay, so God's interested in helping rappers to win awards or helping them in their craft, but they're starving children on the street. You understand? So this warped mental disease, obviously of belief and faith to some degree, is not how we were in that regard. You understand? If we did have faith, it's faith in things that we know, not in things that we don't know. Now, in relation to your other question, in terms of the master teacher, just remind me again to just get the detail right.
Right. So how can we protect ourselves from evil?
Okay, stop there. Okay. So in protecting yourself on evil, so in protecting yourself from evil, we talked about this before, psychic self-defense for ourselves in the physical. So this is where a person, as I say, we touched on this last week, is maintaining a positive mental state even in difficult situations. There's some exercises that people do to maintain positive frequency, positive mentality. You don't drop your vibrational rate so that one loses control. Now, a tightrope walker walking on the tightrope has fooled the mind using reflection and projection, because the imagery that he's projecting outwards, it's all controlled by the mind anyway. We're taking in light energy through our eyes, and we are producing a three-dimensional interpretation of the image and basically projecting it back outwards. Understood? So what we believe is what we see, in a sense. It's not necessarily what is real. So in using that power, the person projects, instead of thinking, I'm 200 feet off the air walking on this rope, the person tricks their mind to think that I'm walking on the ground. And so it removes the fear, so on and so forth. So in a similar way, that's how one would protect themselves from adversity, by staying on a positive frequency and keeping protective shell, etc. around them. The other way is that to fight the unseen, you connect with your safaf, your ancestors. So you may have a great-grandmother who's passed, great-great-grandfather. So understanding who are those 29 people, those ancestors make up your 4 generations, connecting with them, understood, and putting them to work, they're going to fight that protection for you. Your oldest female ancestor, for example, if we understood it properly, we would connect with them first out of respect, because she is the one who protects the family line. In so much like see female lions in a pride, you understand? They protect the pride, you understand? Obviously, you got the male lions there, but they protect the pride. So your feminine line, the sacred feminine line, helps to protect you. And so if you put them to work by having that connection, talking to them, do you understand? Asking them to assist you with certain things, so on and so forth, that allows proper protection. And obviously you got to make sure as well you don't put yourself in the wrong places at the wrong time as well. But as I say, your ancestors are there to help you and fight for you as well if you connect with them and you task them and put them to work on your behalf. That is our true spiritual power. In relation to the master teacher, so second bit, just ask that again. Mantho?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just clicking. Mouse is all over the place. Right. What was it? Right. So also for your enemies, but you've done that. So it says, take Dr. York, for example. Was he able to predict what happened to him? How can he set himself free?
Well, interesting enough, it's a good question, and one that people always ask. He would say that he put himself on the cross. So, I mean, there's evidence, persecution of leaders, etc., that have predicted that he was going to be taken at a certain point. And this is predicted, I suppose, in this time and in ancient times, and even in holy tablets. In holy tablets, there are verses in there, certainly the Yaqub story in the Holy Tablets, interesting enough, it talks about this is the story of Yaqub of the past, the present, and the future. And one of the principal characters that assisted in putting the master teacher behind bars is, I say, his own sort of stepson, man named Jacob York. So these things were predicted. The issue in this situation is that who's the test for? Because the master teacher is trapped within the belly of the beast. Zechariah Stitchin wrote a book, which the name, just bear with me 1 second. Just wanted to make sure I got the name right. Yeah, The Wars of Gods and Men talked about the being Murdoch being falsely accused of a certain crime, and then when he was found innocent of the crime, because they'd locked him in this particular pyramid, there was no way to get him out, and so they had to kind of figure out, as I say, how to release him from that pyramid. And it's got some, I suppose, correlation or symbolism to what's taking place today. So in order the real test is about us and us coming together in a unified state, having love for each other as a people, and our ancestors, in terms of forcing or trying to direct us to do that, are going to put certain tests and obstacles in front of us. Yeah, no other black organization has really come back from a COINTELPRO attack in that regard. You understand? We've seen a movie just come out recently, isn't it, called Judas and the Black Messiah, which is primarily about that type of thing. It still goes on today for various reasons sitting behind that. So the test is really for us to come together and figure out, as I say, how Murdoch in The Wars of Gods and Men was trapped inside the pyramid, how to unlock or how to bring that being out. Now, certain times solutions have been placed in front of us, that our ancestors have placed in front of us to unlock that situation, and because we've not been unified mentally, we haven't been able to exploit that solution being presented in front of us. So, and all of this ties into nature. They talk about the master being trapped within what? The belly of the beast. I'm going to say it again. The master is trapped inside the belly of the beast. Now, in a certain type of situation, a woman is pregnant. And what you got to understand is that when a woman's pregnant, like in that movie, The Matrix, when a woman's pregnant, she's got a protective shield around her, correct? It's called the amniotic sac. And it's there to protect the baby from the mother's own immune system. Yeah, so because the baby, obviously with the male's genes and seed, is considered or recognized by the body as a foreign entity. So therefore it seeks to attack the baby. You understand? So so the mother's love is doing two things at one time, isn't it? It's protecting the baby, but while the internal system is trying to destroy the baby. And so in that movie, The Matrix, if you remember, which was, interesting enough, they say it was written by a black woman named Sophia Stewart, as opposed to the Wachowski brothers. Interesting enough, who both now are no longer brothers, they're now females. Understand? Yeah? So they didn't, rather than give Sophia Stewart her money, if it's true that they stole her script and her story, because it's a woman's story. Yeah, The Matrix, as is Terminator, and those are books, a woman's story. There's 3 Matrix films, 3 trimesters overstood. Yeah, so if you look at the thing, that you see that they look like they're moving through the birth canal. The ships look like sperm, so on and so forth. So if you understand it, it looks like a woman's story. But rather than pay this woman their money, they rather cut off their. You understand? Don't give this black woman a rightful money to make it still look like it was them who wrote the story. So the Wachowski brothers are now the Wachowski sisters. Now, the point is that even in that movie, there was a female character, isn't there, that was helping, the character Neo. Understood? There was a female character who was helping the character, even though the system was attacking that individual. Understood? So everything that is happening, everything that is taking place right now is our story. But have we got the eyes, 2 physical eyes, and the third eye to figure out what is going on and how it needs to be played? Because the people who are against us right now, one could argue, they're just doing what they were created to do, isn't it? They're fulfilling their own nature, you understand? As that opposing force. Much like, interesting enough, the white blood cells of the body, they haven't got no emotion in that sense or feeling. You don't have the markers. I don't care the reasoning why you're in there. We're trying to have a child. No. You don't have the markers. We're taking you out. Correct? You don't have the right genetic markers. There's no discussion. We're taking you out. Yeah? Doesn't matter what the reasoning rationale is for. Understood? So some are programmed, in that instance, they're programmed to do a certain job. Yeah? As you see today, some people on this planet are programmed to oppose us in all instances. So our ancestors have said, or as the Master said, I put myself on the cross. And it's explained, they free you, we will free them. So that's the test that obviously is in front of us, obviously through opposition of the nature of the beast as we find it today. And so we have to figure out how to release the master from the belly of the beast, or the harlot, as they call the system, isn't it? Yeah? So on that side of things, in order, as I say, to teach us what we need to do to aid our transformation. So love and unity, the Master has said, is the key to that, for us to say, to figure out, as I say, what we need to do to free him. And we're close, but usually, as I say, when we keep getting there, the gypsy switch happens. Now, many books have been released from the Master whilst he's been incarcerated, but if you think about where we would have been right now with the 476 acres that we had as Tamaray, the many structures that were there that were aiding us in our spiritual transformation. So it was obviously foreign to the people in Georgia at that time, but if you went there and you experienced it, it was like a spiritual sports center, a spiritual gym. Yeah, training you and aiding you, emphasizing you in your transformation. You have to get back to that point again for our own survival as a race. So long story sure the test is for us. Yeah, the masters have set that test for us to overcome or demonstrate that we can come together enough to overcome, let's say, those Mukasu forces in that regard, and demonstrate our power before they take us to the next level. You understand? So mistrust amongst us, disunity amongst us, all of that takes us further away from achieving the desired result that we're looking for. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's from the same lady, and also there's one from Owen as well. But Corinne has asked, how do we connect with the feminine line of our ancestors?
Well, I think we did. So maybe, Corinne, if you probably leave your email address or some way to contact you. We did, I think, in the previous session. For those who wanted it, we sent out the ritual and how to set up a little class, a presentation, how to set up your altar and stuff. So, I mean, most important thing is you need to find out who they are first. So that means sort of an investigation, I suppose, but asking family members, can you get pictures of anybody in your 4 generations, and start that way in the first instance. You've got to do some research in that regard. So that's the first instance. And then there's a way using your own internal spirituality to make that connection. So we are both etheric and physical beings. They are just etheric, or as people say, some say spiritual. So we need to make the connection to them, because we're both. They can't interact with the physical world in the same way without getting very specific types of permission according to the rules of where they are. So we have to be the conduit for both by reaching out. And so there's a way to set up an altar. There's no cutting of chickens and all that kind of stuff. There's some freaky stuff. That's telling you that people who are trying to do those stuff are interacting with lower beings, and obviously not of their own ancestry, oftentimes, because you don't need to sacrifice anything to the sun for it to provide to provide, you understand, in that regard. So, but you have internal things within inside you that help that connection. And so, like for example, your hypothalamus gland is like a internal radio when stimulated, that can help you communicate interdimensionally. So in this ritual, there's certain things that are done, use of a candle and so on and so forth, burning certain types of incense and scent that keeps adverse forces away and helps, as I say, whoever you're trying to connect with to focus in, and then you can have a conversation. So pictures and things like that are necessary for this altar. So let's say, anybody interested, maybe leave your email address in the chat and we can send that present. We've sent it out before, but obviously different people come on this chat, so we can send that back to you again, or the link to that presentation, and then you can set that up in your home, which is pretty much essential for all, not only just Sabaeans, but for Nadjar-u black people. You're walking through this world limping in the Olympics, you understand? So you need your full faculties. They're there to help, you understand? Obviously, they gave you a movie called Aladdin, which is, and Will Smith is playing a blue creature. They call it a genie, correct? Understood? But the word genie is linked to the word genes, you understand? So our genie, symbolically understood, is our ancestry, and that's where we need to put certain types of requests to them to protect our line, but also to help us navigate through this line, because there's interest, we're interconnected. So we need to be sending our emotional energy to them, which empowers them, and they need to make sure they protect their line. So physically, when we transition, we are ascending to these higher states of existence where only our ancestors live and exist. Any other questions?
Yes, I have another question from Owen. He's asked, if a grandchild passes in childbirth, can they be a guardian angel like our past parents? Can that living soul baby help us?
I think we addressed that last week. So I don't know about grandchild. I suppose if a baby passes or is terminated prematurely, so through an abortion, for example, under the rules of death, that spirit is attached to the person. So I say both parents have responsibility for that, not just the mother. So it doesn't matter who made the decision. Both have responsibility for that. So effectively, yes, the child can reincarnate if the mother has another child. That child may come through if they had a future child, because I say that spirit is attached to the individual person. Sometimes through the same genetic line, if somebody dies in an accident, in that type of situation, and again, they may choose to reincarnate, and because their life was taken prematurely, and yes, they can become a guardian angel or stay with the individual within one of their family members' line up to the age of 9 years. So they can still experience the physical, maybe as a guardian angel up to the age of 9 years. But all of these details are in Spiritual You After the Physical You Rise. So seek out that class or book for more details on that. Any other questions?
Right. No, there's no further questions. Both participants have said thank you for your answer.
You're very welcome. So let's press on slightly then. So as I said, we've got a few. So here we see this symbol here. So again, we see, I suppose, a symbol for the flowering reed there, correct? But interesting enough, you see the tat symbol there, even though this is the symbol for Tum. Yeah, so and you can see it looks like a sledge, isn't it? Yeah, but it's a sort of Tum sound there. And the word they use there is Tamam, yeah, for a sledge. It looks like a sledge, yeah. They're using snow. And it also ties into Tamam, which is what we mentioned earlier, or Tatmum, which is perfection. Understood. So again, Atum is translated into English. Exact sun, complete, undifferentiated. No, excuse me. The exact sun, Atum on its own. Exact one. Excuse me. So, say complete. Yeah, a symbol of perfection, like that original egg or cell had everything in it that it needed for creation, isn't it? For whatever it was growing into. It had all ingredients, those secret ingredients. Yeah, that original sneeze or ejaculation of Atum had all of the ingredients that source necessary for creation into existence. So again, but interesting enough, it's got a female, even though it's depicted as male, he's depicted as male, it's got a female element to it, hasn't it? So Atum gave birth to Shashash Shu, or one of breath, and to Tafaf Natat, understood, or one of moisture, yes? Atum gave birth to them, so he gave birth to male and female. So even though he's showing as male, he has female inside of him. Yeah, because he gave birth to both as neutral gender, interesting enough. So his symbol has a feminine element to it. We see here with this tats, Atum, understood, in that regard. So yes, so yeah, interesting enough, these symbols tell very sort of interesting stories in that regard, which, as I say, the point here of this class is not necessarily to go understand all the symbols, but it's to understand that pay attention to the details, you understand, and task our mind to start to seek understanding, again, to the mind of the Kadem Mukmatu, the ancient Egyptians, and get into the mind of the master teacher, because he's bridging that gap for you to understand what the ancients knew, but reforming that and bringing that back so it's tailored for our mindset today, because the genes have tumbled forward. Final one, so I'm going to go through all these, but the final one, I suppose, here you see the foot symbol there. So this is Gadam, and that is a B sound there, a B sound. And so I suppose it's like a goose that we're looking at there. You understand? You've got various different birds, I suppose, in that regard that we can look at, and particularly in this regard, I suppose this one here is a pin-tailed duck. Yeah, pin-tailed duck that we're looking at here. So we've got gadam, which is a b sound for the foot there, and then a pin-tailed duck, which I suppose is the word sabat in the Wapik. You see, it's a hard S there, so this is sabab. Yeah, so some say geb, but sabab there. Understood? So again, the words and the symbols, as we're starting, as I say, to remember the answers to all our prayers. One of the characteristics of that is the re-understanding, of the safaf script. So, as we talked about previously, the way the Nine is structured as a book is that in the first introduction, which we get time, we'll go through this, but look at it, it's in pure Sabaean script. So, obviously, at this particular time, there's an expectation from the master that we would have mastered the language. You understand? Now, so have we applied ourselves enough to be able to read this with understanding? You understand? And if we're just coming into it for the first time, or we're just newly into it, then the challenge for us is, okay, well, this provides an exercise for us now, because this is tasking us to now understand what it is in our language, because it does have a different meaning, which we need to start to think about and pick up in that regard. You understand? So another test almost for us to start to express our culture in the language of our culture, because all different people, let's say you think about two Italians speaking or whatever, that induces it's a certain type of sound, isn't it? A certain type of vibe or expression of those people, and there's then things connected to that culture, pizza, pasta, whatever the case may be, that are associated with that culture. But it stems from the expression of that vibration is their language, their tones, how they speak, how they express emotion. You understand? How they communicate meaning to each other. It unifies them. You understand? So in a scenario where you're amongst different people, if those two Italians or whatever in a setting where they're amongst non-Italians, because they speak maybe that same language, they're gonna vibe on a certain level, isn't it? They're gonna come together. They don't know each other. Well, they know each other, but they might come together on that vibe just because they speak the same language. So it is a manifestation of part of that healing. That this language, a miracle, was part of that miracle. We're always looking for things to come out of the sky. They are coming out of the sky, and they're being put in books for us to absorb and read. And there's people amongst the tribe who are very skilled in language and are teaching others. And we have to all get on it. It's simple but hard at the same time, if that makes sense. So it's easy. It's been done in a way that's easy to absorb. It's hard. That requires a little bit of discipline to implement. And this is specifically, we've been raised in the Western Hemisphere, and we're generally speaking not multilingual, especially in the UK and the United States. Understood? Not multilingual. You can't say that for other European countries, because they learn their indigenous language or whatever, and then they learn English as well. So they're bilingual, even speaking multiple languages. Us, in our ignorance of fake superiority, think that speaking English means that we're intelligent because somebody can't speak English. They're unintelligent. Yeah, so this ignorance is something that we have to break. Part of that is learning language. You can't truly be a Sabaean you don't speak Sabaean. So our generation, or at least the generations, have to basically absorb this into memory, so we can express it and put that in the morphogenetic field, so that future children are going to be born with this obviously already programmed in. So why it's detailed in books and things of that nature is because we are reading or re-adding that which has been lost. Understood? And committing it to memory is the key. You understand? So it's there and obviously of operational use. And so basics start with obviously written script, speaking, so on and so forth. So the 9 is one of those books which I suppose doesn't have a lot of words. It's not a massive book. It doesn't have a lot of words, but it's packed in with meaning because it's in the language in that regard. So that's telling us how we need to use the book as a certain type of manual. Understand? And so the language obviously is providing context. So we're giving here what we've been given here: the language, the transliteration. So the way we learn language, at least at these early stages, is that each letter has an English equivalent to how we understand English now, primarily. But in times our language was written right to left, left to right, you understand, up, down, so on and so forth. Even if you see this in fourth script, it can be multi-directional. So we've been given things in stages that allow us to absorb and learn and get the tones and different things right to form that expression amongst each other. But also, as I said, certain words or certain pronunciations take our language in terms of its vibrational expression out of the range of other races, because they can't make the same sound because they don't have the same apparatus. Understood? As we see from the excuse my French, but bastardization of many of the names of our own Sumerian or Egyptian ancestors, like Tutankhamun. It's not Tutankhamun. Tut-Ankh-Amun is one of the names. Yeah, it's not Ankhenaten. It's Ankh-en-Atun. It's not Nefertiti. It's Nafar Twi. Understood? So the bastardization means that the tones are not right. So if you're trying to activate certain forces in nature, it needs to be accurate, correct? Opening gateways, activating certain spiritual powers, the tones need to be accurate. Yeah, when you put your PIN number in your phone, you can't be one digit off. It needs to be right to unlock. You understand? You need to put the right code in to unlock the phone. The right pattern in to unlock. Can't be kind of right. It needs to be exact. Understood? So, you can't try to make fire. Either you're going to make it or you're not make it. You can't try to make it. You know what I mean? And it be produced. You got to, the right circumstances, etc., have got to be right to trigger certain forces in nature. Certain timing, tone, all that stuff is key. So it's been laid out in a way which, okay, we need to understand our language, or at least understand the script first. Then we're given language, then we're being given translations to work with, you understand? And obviously here, you can see on this page, we see the numerical structure there to give some interest, give some challenges. So now you can pick up the book and just say, okay, I don't understand that, ignore that, I'm just going to read this. Do you understand? Which is, I just want to get into what is in the book and what's being said. You understand? Just to understand. That's one way to do it. What I'm saying to you now is that you need to think about and pick up things and say, okay, no, don't ignore the challenge that the master is putting in front of you. Embrace it. You know what I mean? Embrace the challenge. Now, obviously, you want to get some quick information, you might fly through it. But the challenge, there's nothing wrong with that. But the challenge that's being set in front of you is understand this, it translates to this. That's what the challenge is. You know what I mean? When we talk about detail. So when we pick it up, it might take us a lot longer to read it because we got okay, can I read in my own script? Okay, boom. Not only that, then I've got to understand what the words mean, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth. So there's a challenge, there's an unwritten challenge in it. The book doesn't say in the front of it, this is designed to help you to understand the Sabaean language. It doesn't say that at the front. But the hidden tests are for the sincere, isn't it? They're for the diligent. They're for the ones, you know what I mean, of us without the lazy gene. almost in a sense, which can be corrected. You understand? We're not with a consumer mindset. Okay, I just want to get this. No, we got to imagine if all the books were in the Sabaean language. We would not only be vibrating on a higher level of vibration, but it also forms a protection, isn't it, against the information who's not worthy to receive it, because they've got to know the language to receive it, which is why when we go back to the front cover, things were placed in symbols. Yeah, keep knowledge away from the fool. Are we going to contribute to that legacy, or do we want everything to be lowered to our vibrational rate for our understanding? You understand? Because that's how we could sometimes carry on. Oh, well, I don't understand it. Explain everything to me. Bring it down to my level. No, you have to raise up. As we've expressed before, the Panatho not appearing in the physical. They will only come down to the fourth level of plane of existence, the mental plane. So you've got to raise up to meet them. You're not trying to get caught up in the physical world, or physical level of vibration, and get caught up in all of the desires, so on and so forth. They're beyond that. So you've got to raise up to their level to meet mind to mind. So these are certain tasks and exercises which are placed in front of us, where, as I say, if we're ignorant, we ignore the challenge in front of us. I'll get to it later. You understand? Or you have to think, damn, I've got to take time out intentionally to try and master that book. You understand? So even if I'm thinking about mastering the language in this regard, obviously there are words in here which are not, maybe they might be in the language book. They're just here to absorb. I get a little book with A to Z index, and I can start, you understand, creating my own little dictionary or index to pick up. You understand? These are smart things of a people, lost people, now found, you know what I mean, who are starting to take advantage of, oh, cool, that's done. Or, I mean, that's why they've put that way. Let me now take advantage of that. Thank you for, you know what I mean, the master who wrote the book. Thank you for the administration, or, you know what I mean, the sisters or whatever who put the thing together and took time out and proofread and made sure the scripts are in the right place. Look, there's a lot of work that goes into this, a lot of energy that goes into it before it gets down to the person receiving the book. They think about how much steps and stages, and in this, even in some of the contexts here, the danger from those adverse forces who don't want us to get our own stuff. They want us to keep us serving them, subservient to them. Yeah, we have to show certain appreciation. Okay, well, what can I do at my end? Okay, what I can do at my end is I can absorb it, I can learn it. When I've learned it, I can teach other people how. This is how easy it was, or whatever, or what the challenges were to overcome. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that we're helping each other to grow. You're not just growing yourself. Some people's in their own mind. Me. When I make it, when I do this, when I do that. You know, back to Africa, you can buy a house and live. Like here, you want to go and live in a group setting. You understand? Live in your own culture. You can go back to Africa, live amongst people who are not, where you can't still express the culture. Just be in the same kind of trap. Here, as opposed to what we were trying to build, which was a tamaray that was for everybody who wanted to express and live the culture, as well as invite people in to come and see how the culture was living. And there was other, interesting enough, even when I'm back in on Tamaray, I used to go there on the Saviour's Day, there was people from other organisations, be it Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelites, different people, who were taking advantage of the language. It's like, man, we've got a language, and on it, to master it. Even speaking on better than the people who say that they align themselves with this or call themselves Sabaeans or whatever the case may be. So we've all got a responsibility. So even the language itself is a gift to the race, understood? Which, interesting enough, yes, maybe this relates to movies, but you saw that movie Arrival. You understand? What was the gift that was given to the human race at that point? What was it given to them? They've given a language, if you really understand the movie. It was given a language to communicate. Yeah, a global language, because whatever, those extraterrestrials came back from the past, interesting enough, came back from the future, interesting enough, came back from the future to inform the people in the present in order so that it would be ready for events that were coming up in the future. So it came back into the past to influence the future. And there was an interesting thing that basically the way they was communicating with the woman, it's such a fairly amazing film, but they were communicating the woman through time because, you know what I mean, the language, there was difficulty, isn't it, in human beings who speak in English understanding what was being communicated by those extraterrestrials. And what is the book that we have got called? You understand, our language book called? It's called The Language of Time. None of our language books. It's called The Language of Time. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there. Right, so so let's do a little bit of Sabaeic. It seems like we're going to go into a next part of this, given the time, but no matter, some great questions today. So for better penmanship or pen control, so if you've got a pen or pencil, a piece of paper, what you do is that your index finger and your middle finger, you put the writing device, pencil ideally, or pen if you've got more control, between the index finger, the space between the index finger and your middle finger, as you see here, and then you grip it again with the thumb. So it's a bit awkward to hold the device like that, but that's the cultural way in which we hold the writing device, pen or pencil, whatever you choose to use, as opposed to how you use it now, where you're kind of gripping it with your index finger and your thumb in that way. So you use it between the space between your index finger and your thumb, and you rest it between the space between your thumb and your index finger, don't you? Right now, but here you're moving it one space along and putting it between the index finger and the middle finger, so you grip the pen that way. So it allows, it feels awkward at first, allows for better control or penmanship. So going forward, so just description of how to do that in that regard. Okay, so to help you understand what is in the 9, we have to understand the alphabet. Understood? So if you've got a pen and paper, grab it now. So we'll roll through the alphabet and some of the pronunciation and some of the tips, I suppose, on how to pick up the alphabets. You know, people like myself, sometimes you pick it up, you put it down again, pick it up, put it down again. And so you need to get into a reminder. So this is a motivation, let's say, to get you back on it. If you've been away from it, or if it's new to you, then you can learn it. And if you've got, let's say, one of our books, or intend to get them in the future, then you can use it, as I say, to read more slowly. Because what happens is that we're reading, and then as soon as one of these Sabaeic words come up in the script, in the language, we jump over it and continue reading in English. Whereas now you want to try and, not everything, sometimes you just want to absorb a book. But what I challenge you and people on the phone to do is, and who are going to be listening to this class to do, is to read more slowly. So remember, the master used to capitalize every word that he was writing on, and snobby people who said, this is not proper English. How dare they capitalize every letter? But it's his mastery. The capital letter denotes importance, isn't it? So the person's telling you through symbolism, every word that I write is important. And so therefore you need to read more slowly and start to pick up obviously the transliteration of the word as well as the words in the script, because in the word in the script you're going to look at it and start to go from the individual letters to seeing words as they are in the script. We need to be persistent, perseverant and patient with ourselves in terms of mastery. So before I get into it, is there any questions before I get into going through this alphabet?
No questions for me.
Okay. Let me just see how much time we've got. Okay. Right. Okay, so letters and pronunciation. Okay, so let's go in. So basically each of the, I suppose, in terms of the transition, we've got letters that are equivalent, one may argue, with the English language, and then we've got other letters which Anu, one may say. So each, unlike the English alphabet, each of our letters has a unique sound. So that's the important thing here. When we're in English, it doesn't have, the letters don't have unique sounds. If we think about F, for example, F is EF, but we say it's fa, but we say F. So it causes confusion because the way you pronounce it is one thing. Phonetically, the way it sounds when it's used in a word is different. Do you understand? So, like, I don't know, again, like a Y, for example, is a Y sound, but you put it on the end of a word, it becomes an E sound. So, these double meanings of words, etc., and tones, it becomes confusion. Actually, it's a sign of low intelligence of the people because words in language have double meanings. And even they wasn't intelligent enough to put an alphabet together that has unique sounds. Understand? So it caused confusion, whether deliberately, in a lot of instances, or, you understand, incidentally. So, just because they didn't have the intelligence to do so. So you see a lot of words borrowed from other people's languages, so on and so forth. And then within that, you have other professional languages which you have to be of a certain type of knowledge to understand what that is. So that means you always have to be going through somebody else to interpret what's going on. So here, as I say, we've been gifted back our own language. So as I say, you can see the symbol on the screen. So what we'll do, we'll go through. You can use as a guide to write the symbol. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but draw it enough that you can remember what it is, and I will go through the pronunciation. So the first bit there is a sort of circle, and that can be a vowel sound, really, I suppose, in that respect. But for now, we can say ah. It is a symbol ah, or the sound of it is ah. It's a hard A for all intents and purposes. Ah, yeah, as in apple. So awkward. So sound. Now the way to do this is that you write you might do it today because I'm going through it more quickly, but what you'll do in your own time is that you write the symbol and holding the pencil in the way that we've showed you, and you get a book and you just do a line of that and you keep drawing that circle, and as each one you write you say ah. So, because as you're doing it, the sound, the visualization of it, you understand, becomes connected together. So you're not thinking circle is A with an apostrophe. You're associating the picture with the sound. Understood? So this is what you're seeking to do. You understand? You're just using this for reference because at this particular juncture, where we are at, we need it as a kind of help to help us to understand the language. You understand? So that's what your transliteration and translation is, just to assist us in getting to where we want to be. You understand? Like, the steps. Understood? Yeah, it's just to assist us to get where we need to be in getting our mind to understand it in this context. So you follow the symbol along. Yeah, so as in awkward, understand? So I'll just give you some words. As in awkward, understand? Yeah, on that side. Now, next one is yeah, so this symbol here, and understand, as in apple. So softer, see that hard A before? This is a soft A now, or what we'd say soft A, just for your understanding. As in apple. So remember before, hard A, soft, see the little breathy bit, softer. So again, write that symbol there, and then you do a line of those, saying that. So that's in the word apple. If you're trying to remember, what does that sound like? As in the word apple. Understood. Next one. Yeah, be, not be, be. So I'm saying a bit hard. Be. Yes, again, it's not soft, but it's be. as in bat. So you think about when you say bat, that first bit of the sound, beh, beh. So again, do a row of that or whatever, a few rows, beh, 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 beh. Yeah? Next one. So here, again, C is always a tricky one in English. So this equivalent here doesn't appear that much in language, but the tricky bit here is that C has a K sound, so it is C, but this as is not C. This is K, as in can. K, 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 K. Yes, so you write in again, draw the symbol, K, 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 K. Yeah? So, be, K. Yeah, as in can or cake. In can or cake. Yeah? Be, K. There you go. Right? Yeah, so again, K sounds in can. Moving on. So here we see ch. Yeah, ch. As in champ or cheap. Ch. So again, here you see this is a double letter introduced. So before we all had single letters, it's a double letter. So if it was written in transliteration, or you saw that symbol and you were transliterating it into English, so you were writing the English equivalent of it, then you're going to put a CH. So this is a double letter. Understood? Or it's done as a double letter. And again, unique sound, isn't it? Ch. Ch. As in champ. Ch. 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 Yeah. Obviously with English accent all in there. So so into the next letter here, and de, as in day, day, de, de. So a bit softer, de, yeah, de, de, day, de, 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 yeah, as in day or doubt, yeah, day. So here again, just recapping, be, ka, che, da, yeah, de, excuse me, de. And then here we have another double letter. So when we're in our sort of English equivalent, it's another double letter. So it can be seen as DZ or DR, and it is a hard de sound. So it's do, 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 as in dole, yeah, or as in dole, do. So you had de, do, de, do, do. So hard D, I'll take hard DZ. You understand? I'm not going to say D. I'm stopping myself from saying stuff in English. Yeah. So again, you're going to write that symbol with your little penmanship. Find little ways to write that. That's one where you're trying to do it without taking your pen or pencil off the paper. You understand? But do, do. Yeah, hard A. Much like we had that hard A here, and then soft A here, arguably soft D, and then soft D, and then hard do. Yeah, hard do. Yeah. So when you see Tahuti, for example, sometimes it's spelled with, you see with this, isn't it, or this at the start, and that's hard to pronounce, isn't it? So Tahuti, it's not Tahuti, is it? It's the Tahuti, Tahutwi, do. You're trying to say that do sound, you know what I mean? Get that in there. So yeah, our mouth has to work. Gymnastics, open it up, no mumbling. You understand? We have to get that mouth, that rafam, to really start to work for us, yeah, in that regard. So, any questions? Any questions on that? So I'll move on to the next set. a bit of a whistle stop tour.
No questions.
No questions. Bit of a whistle stop tour, but we're just getting you at this stage to understand the alphabet, so to speak, or the hierophant. Okay, so combined, so we had a de, soft, do, hard, and then this one now in that close link category. Oops, no, that's not right. That's, that should be D. That should be a DJ. That's my fault. That's just one set. Let me just correct that for everybody. If misinformation out would be horrible to do that, wouldn't it? That's not right. So 1 second, people. Just correct that for everybody. So that should be a DJ. So if you're writing that, just while I'm waiting for this thing to give me editing rights, that is a DJ. So another double letter. Yes, DJ. And that is thought. So as in thought. Thought. Yeah, thought. Thought. So it's not a d sound. It is a th. Thought. Thought sound. Yeah, as in thought. Thought.
Nabab.
Yeah, go ahead.
Change your screen.
Sorry, you say change screen? Yeah, I've stopped the presentation. Yeah.
Oh, you stopped it, but we haven't got any letters on the screen.
Yeah, that's what I just said, isn't it?
Okay, all right.
There's a mistake on the English equivalent. I don't want people. I need to just change it. It should be a DJ.
Okay.
Not a DZ as it was showing there. Yeah. Just bear with me 1 second. But just while I'm doing that, well, I suppose it's difficult for you to see anyway. So just bear with me 1 moment. If people, if you don't mind.
The audience, you can practice from your A down to Do while you're waiting. It would be great.
Okay, let's get back to where we were then. Okay. All right, appreciate your patience on that, family. Okay, so let's work through these. So we was just on a hard D, hard D, and now we're moving down, to this sound. So this is, you see it as English letters, I suppose, DJ. It's a double letter, and it's a th sound. Th, as in thought. Yeah, as in thought. Th, or tub. Th. Yeah, th, 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 th. Yeah. So if you was looking in that kind of the range, you've got de, soft, yeah, do, and then tho. It might sound very similar over, say it over Zoom, but de, do, do. Yeah, very subtle but different. Different. So th as in thought is that this double letter. So you can see, to the ignorant, they'll be trying to pronounce it all other kind of ways, isn't it? Understand? But you got to know what it represents. Understood? So, next one then is as in event, or evening, again, the letters denote the sound. They don't have a different pronunciation to what it sounds like. Understood? Yes, writing along in your own time to get that tone. Now, next one. F. They're probably more familiar with this one, as in fight, fast, F. 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 Yeah, so fight or fast is the symbol, or to the pronunciation of this symbol. Yeah. As in fight or fast. Now, next one is ga. Ga. Yeah, so like baby, ga. So is in good or go? Ga. 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 Yeah, so nice, straightforward, that one. Ga. Ga. So again, another row of that in your own time. You'd write ga for that sound as in go or good. Next one, more tricky to pronounce. Yeah, so this is again another double letter. So you got to kind of get that g sound in there, but it's as in gristle. Yeah, but that's gristle with kind of rolled up. You're not using the tongue in this instance. So in the back of the throat, you're kind of taking it right at the back of the throat. Yeah, so you're not using it as in, when I say gristle, I'm not talking about rolling your tongue, but it's at the back of the throat. As a little bit like a baby. I don't want to say baby gargling because it's another sound that uses that example. But this is like, but you got to kind of get it is a little bit gurgling, but you're getting that g sound in there. Yeah, so it's a double sound. Bit tricky, that one. Got to practice that one. As in grizzle, you're not rolling your R's. Yeah, so double letter. A bit more tricky, that one, to practice. Yeah, practice to get to perfection, that one. So you need to practice double letter, but back of the throat. Grizzle is the example letter used. Gristle. A bit easier. Ha. 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 As in hey or he. Ha. Yeah. Hey. Ha. 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 Yeah. So softer letter there. Yeah. Ha. As I say. Hey. He. Yeah. Now, this next one is a harder version of the letter before, yeah? So this is a ha, ha, as in hot, ha, or how, ha, ha. So again, sort of a bit little back of the throat, you understand, yeah? Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, it's in hot, ha, hard. I'm not going to say H, but hard, yeah? Hard, he. Hard, he. Hard, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, ha. Yeah, so hard letter there. Okay. So, next section. So you need a row of all of these in that regard. Any other questions? I'll move on to that next section. Okay.
No questions.
Moving on. Okay, so next one then is ich, as in itch or ice. Ich. 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 Itch. Ich. 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 Very close to kind of understand, but ich, Yeah, just get that differentiate. So ice, itch, understand? Yeah, that kind of early initial sound of saying that. Right. Next one then is j, as in just. J, j. Some of these you already know because it's sound. What that letter is anyway, but j, 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 j. Yeah. So on that side, as in just. J, as in just. So, ka, yeah, as in kitten or kind, ka. Well, yeah, ka, yeah, ka. I mean, it's very similar to, one may say the, ko. Understand? But ka here. Not to interject, but there's not much C in our language. So it's there, I suppose, for English equivalent and transition. There's not much C in the language. That's more of an English equivalency type situation. You understand? But it does exist. So there's a letter for it. We've got ka. And then kitten. Ka. Yeah, ka. Now, next one is as in kitten or kind. Next one is another double letter. And so this is more, I suppose, like a baby gurgling. It's similar to the r, but it is like a baby gurgling. A baby could gurgle with a sound, but this is a so get that sound in there. So it does feel a bit like you're clearing your throat, but it's not as disgusting as that. But it's or yeah, which is different to the yeah, which is more of a g, but that G kind of this is yeah, so it's get that in there yeah, with the H, but it's a similar style to the as in grizzle. This is as in, I suppose, the sound that baby would make when they're gurgling. Yeah, so that practice for perfection. Yeah, practice for perfection. Okay, so next one, I suppose it's a as in open. Open. Yeah, it's in open. It's in opening something. Open. Yeah. Next one is la. Yeah. Look. La. As in look or live. La. Yeah, on that side of things. Okay. All right, that's the first half of the alphabet. Not to fry people's brains today. So I think practice up to where we got to, and then we'll do the second half in the next part, even though we're a bit behind, and then go into some of the other stuff I wanted to cover. So again, it's probably a double kind of class. So the 9, and then there's something else I've got to teach freaks and the perfect creature. We've got a few things I want to cover off in the 9, and so some exercises if you want to do. I think if you get the alphabet down, or at least the first half of it, and then we'll go through the next bit next time. In fact, no, let me not do that. Let's press through. Let's press through. That way, for 2 weeks, you can get the alphabet locked down, and then when we move on to the next bit, it's going to make a lot more sense. So no, let's press through. You know, I've got something to be on shortly, but let's press through and just do the final few letters. It's not going to take long. Right, okay. So next set. So get your pens back up. Let's do the next set. So next one is meh. Yeah, meh. Meh as in milk or maid. Meh. but not M. See, M is EM. Meh, meh, meh. Yeah, it's in milk or maid. Maid. Okay, next one. Neh. Or it's in fact, maybe that's better pronounced no. But neh. As in now. Neh. No. No. No, not neh. No. I would adjust that to a U there as opposed to an E. That's my mistake. So U to get it more accurate. No. 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 As in now or never. No. 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 Yeah, so you're writing that down, please change that to a U as opposed to E there on that one. Now, a couple of symbols here, so write down both. So or, this is not part of the symbol. Or, yeah? This or this, stylistically. So, and that is a ha sound, yeah? Ha. Ha, as in pet, pull, ha. 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 Yeah, as in pet or pull. Third. Next. Fa. Yeah, so fa as in Philadelphia and photo. Fa. 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 Fe. So fi. In bad pronunciation. Fi. 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 As in Philadelphia, photo. Fi. 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 Yeah, very similar to obviously the other symbol there. I'm not going to say what it's in English, but very similar to the other one. So slight variation difference. Say Philly, as in short for Philadelphia, or photo. Yeah. This one, another tricky one to pronounce. It's not an English letter really equivalent. Pata, pata. So you got to do the P and the T. It doesn't feel quite natural, but pata, pata, pata. As in pata. You understand? There's no equivalent in English. Pata, yeah, as in pata. Yeah, pata, P-T-A-H-A-H. Pata, yeah. One of your ancestors. Pata. Yeah, pata. Pata. Sorry. P, pronouncing the P and the T. So, P and the T. Together. Pata. Okay. Next one, then, is, again, tricky one a little bit. Cough. Cough. So, as in cough. This is a hard letter, another hard letter. Cough. 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 Cough, as in cough. Back of the throat. Cough. 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 Yeah. Cough. 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 Back of the throat. Hard. Cough. Yeah. That one. So that's a hard sound. Yeah. Cough. Cough. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the next one then. Not much more to go. So here, a bit of a test really for those with the dominant genes. This is re. Re as in run. Re. 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 You've got to roll your tongue for this one. Yeah, it's not re. It's re. 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 So you've got to roll that tongue. Very important. Yeah. Re. 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 So even as in run, we say run and we just say run with a R. But no, you got to keep the vibration. Ra, re, re. So you roll the tongue. Re, re. Yeah. So if you can't do it, you need to practice that one. If you after practice still can't do it, it might be a genetic issue. Ra, ra, ra. No worries. It's still part of one same family. But ra, ra, ra. Yeah, as in run. Okay, next then is sa, as in sister, sa, 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 sa. So sister, sa, 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 sa. Again, the line of this, as you're saying write it down, sa, 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 sa. Yep. Okay. Next one, this is a hard one. Remember, like a bit like our de, do, fo. Similar system here with on the sa. So we got so. Yeah, so. So a hard sound here. So, as in south. So. So hard and a hard it's better and better this is se so in south, yeah, so hard sound there, yeah, so you get that letter so. This one here, just that is smooth, is like a sideways, lack of a better word, meh. Yeah, so that is a smooth, shouldn't be, there's no line in here. That's a smooth line that should be, it's just a pixelization issue there. So it should be just a straight line there. And that is a sh, as in show. Sh, as in show. Sh, another double letter. Sh. Okay, yeah, so that one, again, another line of that. Next one, yeah, probably forward the mind a little bit. Folks, different to English. Ta, as in take or tea. Ta. As in take, tea. Ta. So again, this is your mind in this language. That symbol means something different. So ta. And that's why, again, sound and the visual gonna then line that with what that didn't mean for you previously in a different language. For in this system, that's what that symbol means. Now, again, in that same system, a hard letter here, yeah, as in to, yeah, as in tub, towel, to. Yeah, so hard, so you got kind of to, hard, you understand? Hard sound again. To. Yeah, slight variation. Te, to, or te, to. Yeah, see the difference? Te, to, hard. Yeah, te sound there. To. Next one. Next one here. So this is the. Now this is a th, but it's slightly flattened. So it's as in this. The. As in this. The. So remember on that other DJ sound, that was a thought. It's in thought. This is in this. The. So it's a more of a, I suppose, a flatter, slightly flatter sound. The is in this. Yeah. Next one. Almost there's the last section. So this is a sound. As in under. 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 Yeah. Next one then is the v. In fact, that should be probably an A. You could replace that v. Maybe that's an A there. Sounding, but as in vice. Yeah, as in ice. Yeah. Next one then is the in walk, weather, yeah, walk, weather, on that side. Yeah. Next one then is This is a bit more tricky. This is X as in X-ray. I suppose it could be it's X as in X-ray. X. So you're trying to say X, but give it a little bit of a breathy sound. Yeah, as in X-ray. Next one. Yeah. So as in yes or you, yeah. Yeah, as in yes or you. Yeah. So again, yes or you, that is the sound for that letter. Here is Z, as in zebra or zoo. Z. Yeah, zebra or zoo. Z. Yeah. And then last one, again, it's like tricky. So this is the. So this is the. So this is as in the word that. So it's actually, that's showing Z. It's a T. Your mouth in the same way you do the TH, but in starting point of that. So remember the heart on that DJ, it was like a tho, as in, yeah. This is like that, and then the other letter, which looked with the two circles and the line between it looked like a upright dumbbell. That was a the. See, tho, the, that, tho, the, that. Yeah, so this is more as in that. So again, it's still a TH with a much flatter sound. That. So it's not Z. That. Again, new sounding letter there. So you can see, you don't know what you're doing, you can pronounce the wrong thing. Yeah, correct. So, as in that. Yeah, so again, that TH sound, re-emphasizing, is TH, not the right TH, but it's TH. That, as in that. Yeah? That's how you get this. So that's all of the alphabet here. So thank you for sort of hanging on. And then we're going to walk through, as I say, in the next session, walk through just to the importance, I suppose, of seeing that there's certain things in the language. Now you're learning this alphabet, that they don't appear the same way, even in the transliteration. You have to be sort of conscious about looking at some of these details. As we said, talking about detail here. Let's see something. Okay. A duplication. Just bear with me 1 second. In fact, we'll wait till next week. Let's not fry up too much. As I say, we'll pick it up. Pick it up in the language. So practice that. Practice the alphabet or harafat. And as I say, if you've got some of the books already, then you can practice by looking at those words and see if you can recognize them. But more importantly, as I say, just for this instance, get the sound in and the words, even if it's just, you know what I mean, you don't fully get it, but you can recognize the symbol and associate with a certain type of sound. That's important. So it's your first kind of starting point to get it, so we can delve into the 9. As I say, when we pick it up next time, we will go into, as I say, even more why it's important, and some of the differences that you see from English into the transliteration and then seeing it in the language, because obviously each one of these letters denotes a certain type of symbol as well. Yeah. Okay, on that note, if there's any questions, we're going to close out for today.